Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to Kyle Seraphin Show for Friday, December the 5th. And a good and hello and a welcome to all of our friends in the Hoover Building that are listening and to all of our friends nationwide in the FBI. Some of you who have texted me and said this is BS. Isn't it stupid that we have to deal with this today? That we have to go to work for an organization that does this thing. So what are we going to talk about? I wonder. It's just been like absolutely devouring my attention span and my social media feed. We're going to be talking today about Arrested. The FBI decided to clear up all of the governmental conspiracies about the government being involved, potentially the Capitol Police, the FBI as a cover-up, the ATF potentially providing some cover fire as well, and the CIA. They've decided to they've decided to destroy all suspicion by picking a black autistic loner who lives in mommy's basement and was able to escape the FBI's piercing and penetrating gaze for almost 5 years. And you're going to be shocked to find out that the thing that was revealed that allowed the FBI to finally get their man, it was nothing. Oh, it was just nothing. They had the information all along and they just apparently claimed that they just didn't want to do it. Sure, Jan. That's where we're at right now, guys. This is the Psyop that we are trying to buy. And amusingly enough, a lot of the people that put MAGA in their bio or will go and introduce themselves while wearing like a Donald Trump shirt, those people have gone from the government is out to kill us, they want to get us, and everything they do is suspect because we saw what happened to J6ers and we saw that they went into the house of Donald Trump when he was not yet a presidential candidate. Those people now 100% believe the government because these are our guys. I'm not saying that we deserve a better class of Psyop. I think we actually have the Psyop we deserve if that worked on you guys. If an autistic 30-something-year-old guy living in his mom's basement was able to avoid detection from the FBI by using his own personal cell phone in Washington, D.C., and dropping pipe bombs that he bought himself with his own credit cards, and then drove his own car, which was captured on a license plate reader, and they found him through, you guys are going to be absolutely shocked. Anybody who's followed the J6 stories are going to be shocked. They found him through, I'm going to just go ahead and check my notes over here. They found him through cell phone pings, a license plate reader, and credit card receipts, like you find everybody else in every crime in minutes. Okay, cool. That's where we're going to go today. So tune in for the rest of this show where we have a good time and then we try to pretend like we don't forget the rest of the last 5 years, which did exist. Can we just agree on that? I'm going to have Steve Friend join me because that's always fun. Hobbyist, podcaster, and friend of our program, and certainly not a paid or monetized guest. Never has been, never will be. We can't even afford that kind of stuff here. Let's get into a quick sponsor read because we're in the spirit of snarkiness and sarcasm, and this one's just as good as anything else. Guys, it's Christmas. Christmas is coming in. It is Advent. People are wishing me Merry Christmas, so it is time for the annual tradition, men, where we pretend that we didn't wait until the last minute to buy gifts. If you're going to give socks and underwear like half America does anyway, go ahead and give something that doesn't suck. How about that? Undertac.com. That's the website. Undertac is a tactical, ultra-comfortable underwear that is designed with input from real special forces guys who tested them in the jungles and the Saharas, or whatever the heck it is. What are they? The plains of Africa? I'll have to talk to my buddies in SF that went to Africa. I'm probably going to get crap for that. All right. It performs when you're getting shot at. It'll perform when you're doing your laundry or hanging out with your leftist relatives, which is kind of like getting shot at. They're insanely soft. They're 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. They're naturally antibacterial. And they have a hidden E&E pouch where if you're Steve Friend and you need to run a marathon to get away from, I don't know, in-laws or other crazy people around you, you can put a couple of almonds and run all day. Go to undertac.com. Use promo code Kyle25 as you see on the screen. Kyle25 will save you. You guys are going to be surprised, but 25% off during the Christmas season right now. They don't stop at underwear. They've also got American-made socks. They've got t-shirts. They've got a women's line, which are like booty short things, but they look kind of like what the dudes' ones are. So I guess we wear booty shorts too. Hoodies, joggers, take your pick. Certainly not useful if you were going to try to evade the FBI while doing a pipe bomb expedition, training exercise, cover-up thing. Undertac.com. That's under TAC. at the end of it.com. Kyle25, 25% off. Get your gift shopping done. Mission complete. Link in the show description. Let's do Friday's Friendly Friday. And I'm ready to talk to my friend Steve. Friend Steve, my hair's out of control. The narrative is spinning, and you were on the Kyle Seraphin Show after a little bit of break. Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it has been a minute or three here. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, but always grateful to spend Friday mornings with my friend. Just my friend, definitely not a
do you want to do a caveat of some kind?
Podcasting sensation. We're just jaw-jacking about things that are open source, nothing classified. And I'm here independently as an American citizen exercising my First Amendment right and a hobbyist podcaster to talk about those issues, not representing any particular agency, arm, department, or bureau of the federal government of the United States.
Why do you have to give that caveat? I thought you had a signed agreement with the Deputy Attorney General of the United States of America.
It's day 101 after having that agreement signed to have me reinstated with all back pay, security clearance, health insurance, all benefits, duty and assignment in 30 days. So I don't
What day is it again? Day what?
Day 101.
Ooh. It's like
It's almost like they made
day.
a deal with a guy who's good with numbers.
They probably shouldn't have done that. So anyway, so they owe you some money and they haven't paid you. And I remember you went into an interview, and you told me this the other day, that you went into an interview with the FBI and they said something to the effect of, if we hire you back, could you do the following thing? Is that correct? It was a conditional statement?
Yeah, and definitely had a pre-employment sort of vibe to it. Now, look, I'm magnanimous. I'm almost merciful, you could say, when it comes to giving people
Do I need to give you that? Hold on.
grace.
I'll set you up. Come on. Get you going. Keep going.
But I don't think that they've ever done anything. I mean, you and I have joked about how every time you ask somebody in the FBI, support staffs particularly, to do their job, it's like the first time they've ever done their job before. But in their defense, reinstating somebody has probably never been done before. So maybe we are setting a new precedent here, and they don't necessarily have the phrasing of the questions, but I don't consider myself an employee because I don't have a badge, a gun, a credentials, a supervisor,
Somewhere to show up, a schedule,
vehicle, email address, access to the portal to determine if I'm actually being paid a salary, all of those sort of things that you would expect if you were a W-2 employee.
Roger that. Did you say that you have been quite kind and merciful to the HR people? This is Steve Friend talking to HR ladies as they sob into their phone. That is not it, Steve. That is not the right clip. I had a short clip. Where the hell did the clip go? Oh, there it is. Okay, so hold on. We're going to have one of those kind of days, aren't we? Here it is. Are you not merciful?
Am I not merciful? Am I not merciful?
Why do you make the HR ladies cry so?
Only one of us on this program has made people in the FBI cry, and I believe it was you at the Academy.
I think
They were not necessarily all females either.
That's the rumor, man. That is exactly the rumor. It is not only females. All right, so let's do stories that are interesting. Can we lead off with... Let's lead off with CNN breaking the story of the week, story of the year, perhaps. Interesting. I'm going to have your comment on it. Why did CNN, ABC, MSNBC, CBS, other MSNBC all jump on this revelation and not the prior? I guess it probably has something to do with the search warrant they served yesterday morning, but let's do CNN breaking the story with Wolf Blitzer.
Action with the D.C. pipe bombs case has been identified as Brian Cole Jr. of Woodbridge, Virginia. Take a look at this. These are live pictures of law enforcement searching the suspect's home. The arrest follows an almost 5-year probe to identify the suspect, who has only been seen in grainy surveillance video, shrouded in a hoodie, gloves, and face mask. Joining us now, the former deputy FBI director and CNN senior law enforcement analyst, Andrew McCabe. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. What do you think the significance of this is, and what could have led to the arrest?
Well, it's hugely significant, Wolf. It was a major attempted violent act on the nation's capital and seemed to be at least circumstantially timed with an attack on the Capitol to stop the certification of the election. So when you put all these things together, this is a major crime that the FBI needed to solve.
Oh, it was a major crime they needed to solve. What's the significance of it? It's majorly significant. They were so close to just saying this was when the MAGAs attacked the Capitol, and luckily they got a MAGA. He doesn't look like a maggot to me.
Certainly doesn't look that way. I mean, I guess we'll have to wait for the search warrant to magically turn up the things that are just going to be so coincidental with this. But Andy McCabe, who wasn't actually with the FBI when this dropped, he's going to give you his expert opinion, having sat around $70,000 conference room tables that he authorized when he was the acting director of the FBI.
Dropping it.
There's a lot of problems with this. I mean, look, the overarching thing that I just want to point out, and I'm going to point out a bunch today, but the information that we have and we'll get into to solve this sort of case, timeline-wise, cell phones and license plates and grainy video that was put out deliberately grainy by the FBI, I will add. That would take you, I mean, I'll be magnanimous, I'll be merciful. It would take you about 3 weeks to solve this case. So I'm going to go back 3 weeks to when Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman dropped their story. I think that's when we initiated this investigation, and we got our man for sure, who definitely looks full-on MAGA at this point.
Let's do a little bit of a run through history. Let's go back to November of 2023. I'd like to do the questioning of Chris Wray by Eli Crane. There's a lot of questions about what could happen and why we couldn't find a pipe bomber. So let's do a little historical review of that. And then, folks, I promise you what we'll do is we'll go through the news coverage from yesterday. We will go through some problems with dealing with potentially autistic or pseudo-autistic or mentally delayed subjects. And then we're going to go through some analogous stuff. And I've got the Loudermilk report that I want to key in on something. And we're going to go through the complaint where they used it and maybe even the pipe bomb report, because suddenly a lot of people seem to have completely forgotten that there was like all this history. So here's Eli Crane.
Okay. So you were able to arrest hundreds of individuals who were allowed into the Capitol, walked around, took selfies, but we can't find the individual who committed the most dangerous crime and attempted to cause multiple mass casualty events at the Capitol or around the Capitol.
Congressman, we have an entire dedicated team focused specifically on this investigation. We've done thousands of interviews, visited, again, just in the pipe bomb investigation, thousands of interviews, visited thousands of residents and businesses, reviewed millions of pieces of data. There's something like 39,000 video files. We've assessed like 500 or something tips. We've done extensive public publicity. We've increased the reward money. We've got our lab working on it. We've got our WMD directorate working on it. We've got our Office of Technology division, our cellular analysis team. So the folks that we have working on this investigation are working very aggressively on it. And I, as much as anybody, would like to see it solved.
Well, Steve Friend, those are a lot of words and numbers.
Certainly are. I mean, that's almost like a teenager who got
That's right, Kyle. Those are a lot of numbers.
Saying, you know, mom asked, you were supposed to be home at 5 and it's 7. Why was that happen? Well, you see, what happened was that Jim and I, you know, we had went to the library and then we were at the library and then we were starting to get hungry. And then it's almost as if we're giving you so much information that we're hoping that you don't actually remember the original question.
Steve, you know, I like those snacks that have like the little box with the blue tops on them. But like when we went to go get them at the store last time, like they didn't have them there because they were run out and we had to go buy the different ones. And they were like with the red top and yeah, that kind of vibe. Well, other people thought this was a really big deal. Laura Logan asked this question of Barry Loudermilk, and he seemed to think that there was a major conspiracy.
Is it potentially the biggest setup in the history of this country?
Potentially.
One of the greatest crimes against the American people.
That's why it's so important to get the truth with this. That's what we're working for. And the cover-ups that happened after January 6th is what I'm really after as well.
What about the Republicans involved in those cover-ups? I know it's hard for you to address those things. This is your own party, but this is the reality. I mean,
we're going to go where evidence leads.
No matter what.
No matter what.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yes.
She holds him to it. Yes. Okay. So, Steve Friend, no matter what, the cover-ups, Republicans involved in hiding this guy that you see on the screen who has abnormally short legs, and he does have abnormally short legs, and apparently is part of a major Republican cover-up of some kind.
I mean, that was the tie, right? That was the reason that the DOJ got to use the pipe bomb and all its charging and sentencing documents for January 6th, because it was somehow an insurrection and it was tied to this pipe bomb, which they never evidentially connected the two events I've talked about before. And yes, and in my experience, suspects who drop WMDs in our nation's capital with no regard to license plate readers and cameras or any sort of surveillance capability, they typically change their musculoskeletal structure It's away from, relatively square shoulder lines to sloping shoulder lines, and their hands go from around their pelvis area when they're on grainy camera to nearing their knees 5 years later. Maybe he just had an arm growth spurt in the intervening time.
It could happen to anybody, if we're being fair. The sarcasm is going to be really heavy because there's no other way to do it. Did they actually just ignore this altogether? Was this something that nobody cared about? Here is CNN talking to Steve D'Antuono, who made some very interesting statements early on, possibly part of that so-called cover-up that we keep hearing about that we obviously didn't happen because it was just this lone wolf dude who lived in his mom's basement down in Woodbridge, Virginia. Here is CNN coverage going back to 2022.
One of the top priorities for the FBI is finding that person who left behind the bombs at the RNC and DNC buildings near the Capitol. Those were found just hours before the attack on the U.S. Capitol. And Stephen D'Antuono, who is the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office, talked about that case.
We have done over 900 interviews in this investigation alone. There's 39,000 videos that has been hours reviewing just on the pipe bomb investigation we're talking about, and over 400 leads, tips that the public have given to us. We follow it all. That's what we're doing on this investigation because it is a top priority for us.
So we've seen the videos, the hooded sweatshirt, the face mask, the backpack, the Nike shoes. Are you surprised that none of this has yielded the tip that brought this forward?
In prior COVID times, in any neighborhood, I think, in the country, if you saw an individual hooded, masked, glasses, gloves on, it would have been a red flag for any individual walking around that day. In this case, it wasn't, because of the environment that we were living in during COVID times.
Well, one of the things we wonder is why the bombs didn't go off.
The bombs could have gone off. They just did not go off. In this area where the bombs were placed, if they did go off, they could have caused some serious harm or death.
Steve, can you do a breakdown of what would have happened if the bombs had been bombs?
It would have been a bomb if it had been a bomb, and it could have been catastrophic if the bomb had been a bomb, but it was always a bomb because of its inception or something. And I do think it's interesting that the media covered it right then. That's Stephen D'Antuono right there. That's the immediate aftermath of the pipe bomb. That's when you could say, insurrection. We're going to connect the pipe bombs to the events at the Capitol. And then a whole lot of silence, including when Joe Hanneman and Steve Baker dropped their story about Johnny Kirkhoff, who's Voldemort now, cannot be named, I guess. And then they picked up interest again. So they ignored the suspect when it was potentially or definitely a government actor, part of a government put-up job. But they jumped right on this one when it's got no connection to the Capitol Police officers, which, like bloodhounds, found these devices within minutes that definitively connected it to the government. But we'll jump on this guy because, hey, look, the media, I guess, is racist against black men.
He's black. Yeah, he is black. So there's that. And obviously that's a big problem. So let's go ahead and do this story, which I found to be fascinating. And I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. Steve's going to be hiding in the background. You'll still be able to hear him pipe in if he likes. Brian Cole Jr. of Virginia, this is coming from the New York Post, identified as the D.C. pipe bomb suspect, quote, sources. Suspect has been arrested for placing pipe bombs outside the Republican and Democratic National Committees ahead of the January 6, 2021 riots, identified as Brian Cole Jr. of Virginia, who may have had, quote unquote, anarchist leanings. Nothing official on that from anybody, but multiple sources have said that in the news media. Not sure why that was leaked. Cole, 30, was busted by the FBI on Thursday morning in connection with the attempted bombing just shy of the 5th anniversary of the riot. Sources told the Post the investigators were looking at possible connections with some sort of anarchist writings or leanings, although specifics were not immediately known because they hadn't made that part up yet and haven't fabricated that part of the internet. Kyle added that last part. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. The authorities said that he was caught skulking around the capital city the night before President Joe Biden's election victory was certified by Congress, leaving, quote, viable explosive devices outside the major party's headquarters in Washington, D.C. The video showed him carrying a backpack, gray hoodie, mask, gloves, glasses, pair of Nike Air Max Speed Turf shoes. The devices were found the following morning, just as Congress was convening to count the 2020 electoral votes. Here's where it gets really fun. A distraught grandmother, Loretta, denied his involvement, as grandmothers are wont to do. She said, quote, he's almost autistic-like because he doesn't understand a lot of stuff. I hope he's not talking. Of course, he was talking. As I understand it, he probably gave a confession. He's very naive. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He's just not that kind of person. I don't believe it at all. He's not a terrorist. And grandmas do say that sort of thing, so we'll just take that with a grain of salt. She said he works at the family's bail bond company, Brian Cole Bail Bonds, because his dad owns a bail bond company that, as far as I can tell, based on some stuff he said on some media interviews and some of the searches I've done, maybe 27 states it operates. It's not a small operation. They live in a house that is not small, and it doesn't seem like the dad actually lives there, although there is some sort of male figure, maybe a stepdad or something like that. Interestingly enough, I happen to know someone who lives in that neighborhood, and Steve Friend, I almost moved into the neighborhood right next door. I would have been maybe 100 yards away, backyard to their backyard, when I was looking at a place in Virginia before we ended up deciding to move to New Mexico. So a very weird small world, but I'm very familiar with that area. I'm going to read you a little more if that's all right.
Send it, man.
The neighbors outside of his suburban Woodbridge, Virginia home said he shunned social interactions except when he's waving at Capitol police officers while walking and delivering pipe bombs, and he often walked his chihuahua to a local 7-Eleven. Quote, he's very antisocial. Very, said a neighbor to the Post. He would never make eye contact, almost like he just didn't see you, noted another resident. He was skeptical about Cole being the suspect, claiming the man he'd seen planting the bombs on surveillance footage is taller than Cole. Here's where it gets fun for me. Quote, the guy that I know that walks the dog is pretty short and has real short legs. Like uncommonly short legs, the neighbor said. Quote, I think a gait analysis would be pretty easy to either rule him out or confirm because his legs are, I would say, uncommonly short, those legs. Amusingly enough, I talked to a friend that actually lives in the neighborhood on the same street, maybe 5-6 houses away. And his statement to me was, yeah, wife saw the video of the pipe bomber and said, that's not the guy who walks our neighborhood. I've seen him hundreds of times over the last decade that we've lived here because he walks the dog almost every day. So that's probably thousands of times walking this dog. Apparently, he has uncommonly short legs, as you guys can see in this photo. It looks like 60% torso, 40% legs, which is kind of unusual for a lot of people.
So we're gonna do a gait analysis like a horse, right? Not like the hinge that you open up to see a garden. Just to correct the
That is the
record.
Julie Kelly definition of gait analysis. That's correct. What's interesting is in the picture you're seeing right here, which comes from a family photo that was either like a graduation or some kind of a celebration, he's wearing headphones, as you often find people who are autistic that can't handle sensory overload.
Noise,
I've lived
yes.
next to them. I have a lot of sympathy for that situation, but it's a pretty specific thing that you'll find. And then the second thing is he's wearing Crocs, which is also interesting because the black Crocs he's wearing there must be the dress Crocs. His normal Crocs, the resident noted that Cole stood out in the neighborhood for wearing, quote, red Crocs and shorts all winter long, end quote. The grandson said he rarely leaves the house, but he was doing DoorDash for a little while during that time when he was supposedly in D.C. So there you go.
As part of his antisocial behavior to, in the middle of the night, hop on his cell phone and start texting his friends while he's sitting Indian style, like all dudes with short legs do, around a pipe bomb that's inside of a backpack, not like a female, while wearing clothing that is, I would contend, in line keeping with somebody who's an athlete, maybe a former professional athlete or a marathon runner, a little more streamlined sweats, not like your typical African-American man likes to wear a little bit more baggy from a stylistic perspective.
You know, the fun thing about me is that I am kind of that nerdy guy that I'll tuck in my t-shirts kind of thing, and I'll occasionally wear like a much more fitted sweatsuit if I was going to wear them. It comes from time in the military. I didn't want extra bagginess and whatnot. We always wore like a size down so that you didn't have extra drag and so on. So I kind of understand that athletic idea that sweatpants are meant for that. And then there's the people who wear it as like loungewear, and I don't understand them because they look kind of sloppy to me. You know who else used to agree with the position that there's no way this is just a lone wolf actor living in a mom's basement in Virginia?
Julie Kelly.
Well, actually, even more intense than that. Julie Kelly's boss, source, and official spokes channel. This is the former podcast. I like to call him Dan the Podcast Man because this is what he should be explaining to Dan, the deputy explaining man, who's gone out there and said some other things. I almost have like this compilation of things I'd like to share with you, Steve. This is Dan Bongino, Cirsa, not too long ago. He doesn't seem like he's had any head injuries or amnesia or Alzheimer's or anything like that, but he seems to have totally forgotten that the internet's forever.
They've had it the entire time. But the video appears manipulated, appears dramatically manipulated. And I'm going to tell you why, so we put the bottom line up front, because it is the biggest political scandal the FBI is ever going to deal with, including collusion and Spygate. The FBI, I am absolutely convinced, knows the identity of the person who planted that bomb. I've told you this many times. The person who planted that bomb was definitely an insider. It was not an anti-Trump person. It was someone planting a bomb to create a narrative that crazy MAGA people are trying to assassinate Kamala Harris. because the bomb was planted at the DNC where she conveniently was. She wasn't at the Capitol on January 6th the entire day. No one's been able to explain that. So the FBI released new video. Must have taken them a while to doctor this. And the frame rate seems manipulated. Now, I don't want to get overly technical. We're going to play this video. This is from the great Mike Benz. He's at Mike Benz Cyber, and you need to follow this thing. You'll notice that the glasses the guy had on, that it appears, if you look at this thing through various lenses, the video, and if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, please watch this on Rumble. It appears that they manipulated the eyes with a horizontal blur bar so that biometrics and AI type features would not be able to identify this guy.
That's crazy. So the FBI was hiding the identity of this, and then you got this dude who came in and he obviously already knew who that was, right? I mean, he spent all this time talking about it.
I mean, and the FBI told us that the cell phone data was corrupted. And then we found out that, well, no, the cell phone data wasn't corrupted except for law enforcement, which means that they had already ruled out everybody else who wasn't law enforcement. We were reliably informed, which you would do in some 5 years or 6 to 8 months, depending on leadership at the helm there. But it seems like the 3-week investigation commenced and they got their man that they wanted to get.
That can't be true, though, because I know this is also point number 2.
You ready for number 2? Here's another one. Separate whistleblower reaches out to me. And this I've been working on for a while. This isn't new. Folks, let's just get this out of the way about January 6th. It is now confirmed. I mean, you knew this in advance. So this is why I put this first. This is not breaking news. However, I can confirm to you, in case you were even remotely deluded about it, say you're a lefty watching my show, that the FBI 100% had undercovers in the crowd on January 6th. I know you know that. I'm just saying Christopher Wray's been shady about it and others. I'm telling you from a source on the ground with photo evidence to back it up. The FBI and other agencies, not just the FBI, by the way, had multiple undercovers on the ground on January 6th. Period. There's now no disputing it. I've seen the evidence. Number 2, the pipe bombs that were placed at the DNC and the RNC that I believe were planted there on purpose by people looking to frame Trump supporters, to stop the objection to the certification of the vote. They didn't want people talking about voter fraud problems, so they needed this. After the pipe bombs were found, assets on the ground, including a whistleblower who was not there but was one of the assets on the ground, was briefed about the pipe bombs the next day and shown a picture of a guy in a hoodie. Hey, we're looking for this guy. Planted these pipe bombs. And they were like, wow, that's crazy. Almost killed Kamala Harris, God forbid. This whistleblower tells me that, but 2 days later, after the pipe bombs, he notes, emphasis his, without explanation, they were told to stand down. No need to look for the guy anymore, which is really strange because the FBI is telling us now there's like a $22 trillion reward for finding this guy.
That's crazy. By the way, that whistleblower was not me. We weren't speaking at that point in time. That was in November of 2024. That is very recently. That's like a year ago.
I think we need to rehash just what he's laying out there.
Please do.
So you have the events of the Capitol and the pipe bomb, which were conflated, and over and over again said they were never connected through evidence for me. You couldn't do it. You couldn't be following due process and do that until we linked through Joe Hanneman and Steve Baker's work and Armitage over at the Blaze. Oh, wait, you have this individual who was the pepper ball expert who was taking headshots at people who now through gate analysis and all this other evidence we've shown is likely the pipe bomber, Shawnee Kirkhoff Voldemort, who must not be named.
Right.
And now you have a connection where there's an actual government conspiracy, which comports quite nicely with what the podcaster Dan Bongino is discussing right there. But that had to be completely thrown out. And now we're back to some autistic guy with no political motivation, traveled into our nation's capital, drops these pipe bombs, and never does anything again because he's such a criminal mastermind that they can't catch him over 5 years, even though he drove his own vehicle, used his own phone, used his own credit card to do it. What is more believable to you if you just put on your common sense hat and stop being so thirsty for a result where you get to say, aha, Kyle Seraphin, podcasting extraordinary, political podcasting sensation, I gotcha.
Okay, great segue. We're going to read for our friends over at Silent. If this pipe bomber had been smart enough not to carry his own cell phone and get pinged in the D.C. area by carrying a silent bag, then he probably would have not faced any of these problems. But to just agree with you up front, I think that all government activity is actually just lone wolf autistic, folks. That's just the way that it runs down. Folks, let's face it, that you're tracking device in your pocket. It's called a cell phone. It might be called a tablet. You might be using it on a laptop. Take your pick. If you're a pipe bomber and you want to avoid government scrutiny, you can do it for 5 years, but not forever unless you use a silent bag. Government agencies, big tech, corporate data brokers, even the cyber criminals, aka our government. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the same thing. They're fighting for a piece of your digital footprint, and they don't have to ask. They just take it. And that's why my friends at Silent are making the products they do. slnt.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15% by using my name at checkout. They make Faraday gear that block wireless signals that make you invisible on the grid. That means cellular and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and GPS and RFID and NFC. And there's other probably acronyms that are being developed right now, satellite and so on. Do you want to be off the grid? Yeah, no signal, no tracking, no remote access, no breadcrumbs, nobody hacking your phone while you're walking by, no FBI's trying to hit you up 5 years later and take you out of your mom's basement with a pipe bomb search warrant. The same tech that special operations troops use. It's the same stuff that counter surveillance guys use. It's the same stuff that FBI agents and intelligence operative all around the world use if they want to avoid surveillance and secure their comms wherever the mission may lead you. If you guys are interested in protecting yourself and your family, or maybe you just want a little bit of peace and quiet, check out Silent, slnt.com/KYLE. Silent.com/Kyle. Drop your phone in a silent Faraday sleeve. Get off the grid. You'll be completely silent. You'll be invisible to the outside world. And your wife or your husband may thank you for putting the phone away for a few minutes, which mine does. I have my phone out today. I actually have the empty sleeve because I'm going to probably read something from a neighbor, which is pretty funny in the future. So my phone is running and it is blowing up with nonsense. And if you don't want that kind of stuff, get rid of it for just a period of time. It's how you turn off and shut off and unplug. You don't have to actually unplug. You have to sleeve it. All right. Sleeve it and leave it. That's the rule. We're going to get into some more Deputy Dan, History Man. This is the podcast guy. A lot of people wonder, was QT time ever over? Probably not. Can I give it to you again? Are you ready?
Send it.
Take a deep breath. Here comes another hit.
What did I do now? Because, Michael, our batting average is? What is it again? The Blackout Coffee timeout to celebrate our batting average of, yes, 1,000. I told you that the January 6th bomber case, where a pipe bomb was planted at the DNC, where Kamala Harris was on January 6th, and nobody in the media wants to talk about it. I told you when Donald Trump won, did I not? Go back and find the videos yourself, that there were going to be people in the FBI who are trying to protect their jobs. And they're going to start releasing information now about the bomber, which was an inside job, no question in my mind. It was clearly some Democrat operative trying to stop Republicans from questioning the January 6, 2020 election.
What does an inside job mean to you, Steve Friend?
It would mean that a government principal or actor was in some way, shape, or form involved in this put-up job, which would comport with the theory that Joe Hanneman and Steve Baker proffered quite effectively, I might add. And if we're really concerned about our batting average, if we're podcast, Dan, then this is going to be a hit to that. You're going to take the average hit. Or do you have a new batting average that you're really concerned about? And that's delivering on the high profile cases. So you've been batting 0 for 6 to 8 months when it comes to turning over who was the cocaine in the White House and the Dobbs leaker and Epstein. Oh, I saw it. He killed himself. And that'll all be forthcoming. But now you got to give us something. You are thirsty to get out of that slump, man. You haven't had a hit in a couple of games now, actually in a season. Entirely 6 to 8 months worth. So you got to get that hit regardless of who it is. And this guy who they've identified, I think we spelled out, there's some problems here. Now, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek and snarky. I think that the director and the co-deputy director likely believe this is the guy. And I think that they are blinded by their thirst to have a victory and their thirst to have some football to spike on you, not to mix my sports references here.
I want you to hold on to that idea for a second, though, because you've noticed the energy in these clips. Dan, the podcast man, right? Yeah. There's a certain amount of energy. There's a, panache to what he's saying. I got one more. And then I want you to compare the energy levels, and you tell me if he still believes what he's saying. Because I'm confident he believes what Dan, the podcast man, is saying. Right?
Yeah, same here.
Okay. That's confident. Let's get one more clip. Come on, we got to do 4. We got to go for the cycle here. We've got a 4th Bongino versus Bongino clip. And then I'm going to show you that I guess he just thinks that you're dumb and you don't remember all this stuff, which is embarrassing for everybody, mostly for the people who listened all the time, I think.
Option number 3. And I think you chatsters see where I'm going with this. Did someone in the United States government have some suspicions in advance that the Stop the Steal rally was going to be relatively well attended and that there were going to be some questions asked at the certification process that the Democrats didn't want asked? Mail-in ballots, all this other stuff. So did someone, I don't know who, plotting with someone in the United States government, or maybe not, maybe just on their own. Did someone say, we got to make it look like MAGA's trying to take over the government? So let's get a riot going and let's make sure we leave 2 bombs behind to make sure the press picks up the story so they understand the gravity of the situation so we can shut down this process of asking questions on January 6th.
All right, we're going to shut down the questions. All right, you've seen all the energy levels there. High?
Oh, yeah, because he has a purpose there. He believes in what he is saying. Did anybody have any pre-existing knowledge? Yeah, there were 6 permits, and the president was going to speak at the ellipse. So we've established that. He is bought into his theory there, and he has a very laid out and logical idea that he is articulating very effectively. It's the idea that you and me and Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman have all said now that these revelations that came out about Voldemort, it all fit then. That was the final puzzle piece. Yes, in fact, there was a government scheme in place that finally connected the pipe bombs to the events of the Capitol. And on top of that, you had the person who did it taking headshots in order to incite riots.
Okay. Well, with all of that energy and all that ground, and by the way, I've got an entire page here, which I think we will. We may go a little bit long if that's okay with you, Steve, but I've got an entire series of notes that explain both timeline and why Podcast Dan knew what he was talking about, even if he didn't have it, even if he didn't know, to do the Candace Owens thing, if he didn't have the facts on him, but they actually ended up backing him up. And for some reason, he chose to go the other way. This is the rarest moment. I actually have something that is rare like a large diamond. Are you ready for this?
All right.
This video clip is Sean Hannity asking a difficult question and making somebody answer it. And the answer is incredibly damning based on the 4 clips that we just saw here. Because it wasn't just Twitter posts. Dan said this over and over again. And why are we bagging on Dan? Because he's the number 2 at the FBI, and he's the one who got credit in the press conference for the great work of getting this done. And by the way, happy birthday, Dan Bongino. Your birthday was yesterday. Way to go. It seems like they gave you a birthday present. Hannity didn't feel like he was going to be nice to you on your birthday, and he did this. Journalism, which is absolutely bizarre.
I don't know if you remember this. This is before you became the deputy FBI director. You put a post on X right after this happened. And you said there's a massive cover-up because the person that planted those pipe bombs, they don't want you to know who it is because it's either a connected anti-Trump insider or an inside job. You said that, long before you were even thought of as deputy FBI director.
Yeah, that's why I said to you, this investigation's just begun. We are pretty comfortable. We have our guy. I think as again, legal process starts to surface and information and facts start to come out, the public's going to be very comfortable with the investigation that was conducted under Director Patel and his leadership. He's been great on this. But I don't want to, listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear. And one day I'll be back in that space. But that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director. And we base investigations on facts. And, it was interesting. I was looking out in the crowd today at the presser, and I saw a couple of media figures who you and
I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm going to just hone in on a couple things. He used to be paid for his opinion, which I guess could be construed as bullshit, and now he's paid for facts.
Is he dunking on his prior life?
Who says that? Who says the things I used to say were nonsense because that was the nonsense job, and now I have a serious job, and that's why I'm not having any fun anymore? Look at the energy differential there. Which Dan does Dan believe, do you think?
Well, I think that if you put the lasso of truth around him, the Wonder Woman lasso of truth, he would be in the former category where he was on the podcasting. His actual response there when Hannity asked him the question reminded me a lot of when they were asked about Epstein, when they did the dual interview with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and he had that big exhale, like, he killed
I'm going to have
himself.
to do this. Steve, how many people have you arrested as an FBI agent when you were doing that job?
150, 200.
And how many convictions did you get out of those?
150, 200.
Did you have any that
I was near 100%.
Were any of them acquitted?
A number of acquittals. I believe I had 4 that went to trial.
Okay. And did some of them end up just dropping charges at some point? Is that
yes, but I mean, we're talking about single-digit number as well.
Okay. So what, 1%, 2%, something like that?
Yeah, it would be 1 to 2%. 98%, I think, is probably a fair and accurate stat for me. I don't bat 1,000.
Okay. When you arrested somebody and you took them into custody and you gave them a Miranda and you did an interrogation under a Miranda, or maybe you didn't need it because you just put them in prison and held on to them. Marshal Service gets them. And somebody said, Steve Friend in the office, they'd say, hey, man, how's the so-and-so case going? Did you say, well, the investigation has just begun and I'm pretty comfortable I've got my guy? Have you ever said those things after arresting somebody?
No, I don't ready, fire, aim when it comes to due process.
But why not, Steve? But why not? That's the serious question. Seriously, that's what he's just said. He said, the investigation has just begun. We're pretty comfortable with what we've done, and I think the public is going to be pretty comfortable. What standard is pretty comfortable in the legal sphere when it comes to arresting somebody?
A probable cause.
Is it? Is that probable cause? Is I feel pretty comfortable? Do you think that's a one-to-one?
No.
It might be.
That's information or an allegation of a crime that would allow you to open up an actual investigation. You don't put the handcuffs on at that point because the FBI it's involved in long-term complex investigations. They want to be 98 to 100% sure that you did it. They actually err on the side of being beyond a reasonable doubt before they actually go forth and have you go to the judge and swear out the warrant. They don't want to waste time and resources. I've had cases that were not just indictable and arrestable and convictable. I've had them to the point where the judge said, why are you continuing to bring me more information? Just go arrest this guy. But that's the way that the beast works because they are so concerned about following, allegedly, the process. We don't want to put the wrong person away for a crime that they did not commit.
It's weird that you would say that having, what do you think? You got maybe 10x as much time as Kash or Dan or Janine Pirro have in that sphere? Is that fair, like working with the FBI?
Sure. I mean, now that they have to theoretically give me back credit, I've got over 11 years with the Bureau.
All right. They're just beginning. And so I just want people to understand that that's not just Dan Bongino saying that they're just beginning this process. They're just beginning this investigation has just begun.
Back to the pipe bomb suspect. Do we think he acted alone? Do we think he's a lone wolf or connections to other organizations?
You know, the investigation continues and we're still, in the beginning of all this. But, it's something that we certainly will continue to look toward. But right now, he seems to be it. But if anyone has any information they want to call the FBI, then we are certainly, looking forward to receiving it. Our job right now is, when you indict a case or when you charge, the evidence gathering does not end. It continues right up until the day of trial.
Any sense that he was planning anything else?
No sense at this point.
No sense is probably a better soundbite. Folks, if you're watching us over on Rumble, give us a like. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate a like there. Just hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you haven't seen this before, we do stuff like this on Fridays. We have a little bit of fun. If you are listening only on the audio platform, you may hear an ad right now. And it comes from the folks over at Spotify, which you can find at KyleSerafinshow.com. Spotify is a superior way to listen because you can jump between audio and video, and maybe you want to see the faces, or maybe you want to see what t-shirts Mr. Bongino was wearing when he was claiming it wasn't cutesy time, despite it still being cutesy time. You can also support us over at KyleSerafin.com for locals. So those are the places. Kyle Serafin Show. You can find us over again on Rumble and on YouTube. Those are both Rumble / Kyle Seraphin, YouTube / @Kyle Seraphin. You can find us on X @Kyle Seraphin. It's really easy. I just use my name. I'm not creative on that. I don't try to be. I do think it's kind of funny that Judge Janine also believes that the process is just beginning. And by the way, nothing says confidence like, if you know something, come tell us more. We'd love to be able to find this conspiracy that we've been alleging for years.
We'd like to be able to do some superseding indictments and double up on our credit for the statistics.
I guess, man. What is this? What are we going to learn anything more from Kash Patel? Maybe we will.
Trace, you're going to learn a lot more about him coming up in the next 24 hours because what's going to happen is he's going to make his first court appearance. He's going to have to be arraigned, and he's going to have to be subjected to the formal charging process. And once that happens, we'll be able to speak more clearly to the public about what we found. But what I'll remind the audience is this suspect was just 25 years old at the time of the alleged pipe bomb incident, not an old person at all, not someone with extensive history necessarily in the criminal justice system. But I think what we'll find in the coming days, maybe even just by tomorrow, is the amount of resources that you have to put into this. Generally speaking, and not stylizing the evidence in this case, you got to go out and buy pipes. You got to go out and buy end caps. You got to go out and buy sulfur. You got to go out and buy wires. Then you got to figure out how to put that all together successfully. And remember, thankfully, these devices didn't go off, but they could have gone off. They were ready to go off. And so that was a disaster that was averted, thankfully, saving the lives of, hundreds of people around the United States Capitol. And so that's what we were able to hone in on as investigators and FBI agents in the field, let out on that and said, let's go figure out who's buying this stuff and how they're using it and how they're learning how to do it. And I think you're going to get a lot more information as to the how, the why, the when, and the where, and the planning in the coming days.
I'm just going to say stay tuned, Steve. If you could just stay tuned, coming up next week, the why, the where, the how, and the when. Yeah. Which is not in the probable cause statement, by the way.
They can't tell you these things before the initial appearance because it says that in the good and plenty clause in invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence.
He did that after they did the criminal complaint, which is their probable cause statement, which is supposed to include why they were able to arrest him.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of a problem with that explanation, but those bombs could definitely have gone off, even though they weren't viable, according to your own experts. Did you even read the documents, or did you just get briefed on them because you're so damn thirsty to try to dunk on podcasting extraordinaire and sensation, Kyle Seraphin, that you don't care who actually did the crime when you have the evidence of who did it?
Can you tell me what the very being of our way of life means? If I were to say, Steve, you've attacked the very being of our way of life, what would you take that to mean?
I took away your ability to go on X if you're the director of the FBI.
The very being of our way of life. Just tune in for Word Salad Sandwich. This guy is the worst when he gets out in front of a camera. This is the bad WWE. This would be the guy who doesn't make it to the big show, or he gets there one time and then he says, "You've tried to attack the very being of our way of life." And they're like, that guy sucks. Nobody knows what he's saying. Get him off there. That's his last appearance. His WWE career is over. He's going back to fighting in bars. Kash Patel going back to fighting in bars soon, I think.
General, when you attack American citizens, when you attack our institutions of legislation, when you attack our nation's capital, you attack the very being of our way of life. And this FBI and this Department of Justice stand here to tell you that we will always refute it and combat it. We will provide the safest country the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership here. And that's what we did here today with great resolve on a case.
With great resolve, they did it. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, it just took you 5 years to look at cell phone pings, or 3 weeks, because you've had them the entire time. And in this very transparent administration, this very transparent DOJ and FBI, who's turned over 40,000 pages of documents to Congress, which included the blackouts of all the names of the people that still work there and are still doing this vile, vicious, awful things, like putting innocent people into prison. You've turned over those documents and you've been very transparent. When you had a new release about asking for the public's assistance when it came to finding the pipe bomber, the $500,000 warrant, and you put out the video that was manipulated, that had purposefully grainy video that was out there.
You mean the one that had the blur on the eyes
investigation when
that Dan
you
talked
got
about? I feel like Dan knew about that too. So This all hinges around the idea that there were live devices, because if you look at the way they charged him, and I think this is really suspicious, so I'm not just going to play like sarcastic game all day. Oh, this is good for my mental health, just so everybody understands. This is very good for my mental health. We are going to go through the complaint because the complaint is very specific. There are exactly 2 charges, 18 U.S.C. 844 D and I, Delta and India. One of them is the interstate transportation of this device, and the second one is the use of a device to either destroy or attempt to destroy or damage by means of fire or explosive material, which is very interesting because that's a very narrow, specific thing. And you need viable, you need viable devices for that to be the case for this charge, which is kind of fun. What they didn't charge is like unauthorized possession of a destructive device, which is something you can do under the National Firearms Act, 1934. That's a strong felony, 10 years, so it's not weak. And people who hold explosive devices without a tax stamp, you can hit them for the tax stamp as well, for the evasion part of it, if you're like so inclined to just throw a bunch of stuff at it. I want you to hear the viability requirement. These people keep talking about live bombs and things like that. But anyway, this is kind of a compilation for you guys to get.
You know, folks, this case involved millions of pieces of data. And it is a huge win because it was like finding a needle in a haystack. So much of this evidence was very specific, but a lot of it was also very general. For example, there were 233,000 black end caps of the type that were used in this case. I want you to think about the fact that the FBI had to go through the sale of every one of them to try to find commonality with an individual, along with the purchase of the pipe itself, the cap ends, the wires, the steel, and the 9-volt batteries. Every one of those had to be mined and remined to the point where we were able to then connect. And make no mistake, it was this administration, it was this president who made the decision that we were going to use all of our efforts to get it done, and get it done they did.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And here's the thing. A lot of big numbers there, Steve. Sure. A lot of exciting big numbers, which are also cited in the complaint. We're going to do that in just 1 second here. But it's pretty thrilling to get a little knob slobbery in while giving your big number speech about how great the FBI is. The people who spent years bagging on the FBI, suddenly they're awesome. They're so good.
Terabytes of data when you just issue a subpoena and it tells you the name of the person who's on the account.
Listen,
this is as simple investigation as it gets from what's presented in the complaint.
Here's the crazy part for me. They went through all the data at Home Depot to find out who bought 277,000 different end caps, but in the end, they just needed somebody that fit into the parameters during the time frame that had a cell phone, which was decidedly less than that. And apparently, they were able to cite the cell phone. So did they do this completely backwards? They were like, "Hey, who bought pipes? Did those people also drive in D.C.? Let's get all the phone numbers of all the people who have pipes."
That's the only way it would take you 5 years.
It's the most dipshitted way you could go about this thing if that's what they actually did. Or it's like, "Oh, we found a dude who had pipes. Let's go place him in the cone of uncertainty because he doesn't actually fit into the actuality of it." And I got real questions about the way they put this probable cause statement together, because I've seen cast analysis and I've seen really conclusive cast analysis. And then I've also got the crappy ones where they're like, this person lives in a 1,000-yard radius of these 2 points. And it could be any one of these 75 buildings. And we're like, that's nowhere. Like, that's not useful to us. So a lot of times it's not. And if you don't have multiple overlapping, triangulating cones of uncertainty, this is real sketchy. They're like, yes, they was in the cell phone. They basically gave that there's a possibility, is what I read in this, not a probability. But let's do some more knob slobbery, because this is what happens when you let good cops be cops and you let the president lets you off the leash to do stuff. Dan Bongino's birthday gift.
Folks, this is what it's like when you work for a president who tells you to go get the bad guys and stop focusing on other extraneous things not related to law enforcement. This is what happens. We had a great team. I know it's said a lot in this business. It was a team effort. It becomes cliche, but cliches are useful for a reason because they matter. And this was a team effort. The director and the attorney general emphasized that it was not a new public tip this came from. This was our internal work at the FBI. And I want to just really express my sincere gratitude to this attorney general and this president for allowing us the latitude. I spoke with Ms. Bondi very early maybe day 2. And I said, we're going to get this guy. first meeting, I swore in, and I kid you not, probably 15 minutes later, and the people who are in the meeting know, I said, when I get in there, I want a full brief on this pipe bomber case on day one. And I looked at the case agent after getting a full brief on what they'd done, and they had done some a pretty extensive amount of work. They had chased down, I think, thousands of leads, 6,000 plus interviews had been conducted, hundreds of tips, and it still was relatively stale, the case. And I grabbed the case agent on the way out, and I said, "You're going to get me this guy. You're going to track this guy down, and you're going to find him. You're going to get me this guy. I want him." And that started what's been almost a 9-month operation right now to make sure that we could get full accountability and transparency to the American public and find this guy. And today we did.
On Dan's birthday.
It took them 9 months to look at cell phones, which would give you the identity of the person who was the account holder, which would give you the bank records of those people, to then get the bank records of that person to figure out if they did any purchases. I would do that by myself in 3 weeks.
Here we go. Ready? Let's put this on the screen. Steve, I think you can still talk, so let me make sure you're still there. Yeah, you are. Okay, so affidavit in support of the criminal complaint. It was filed on 12/3. That was 2 days ago, and then they did the arrest on 12/4, and here we are on 12/5 saying I'm a special agent employed since 2009, so not a new agent. That's good. Investigative or law enforcement officer of the United States under Title 18 explains out that. Specialized training, working in international and domestic terrorism operations. Interestingly enough, because this agent says that he's basically a CT or a counterterrorism agent, but doesn't charge a CT crime per se. There's no ideology in this entire statement, which I do think is actually relevant, and it is pretty specific. Generally speaking, you'll find that there's like an ideology piece of this. So I want to scroll through some of this. Affidavit is in support of the criminal complaint of the guy. Here's what it's for. Interstate commerce, explosives with the knowledge or intent to kill, destroy, or intimidate. And that's your 18 U.S.C. 44 Delta. And then you have this 18 U.S.C. 844 India, which is in this case, attempt to damage or destroy by means of fire or explosives. Hence, they kept repeating viability and live bomb and so on and so forth. This is going to get a little bit more nitpicky, but I want you guys to kind of understand where it's coming from. The background is that they talk about the January 6th discovery of the pipe bombs. Steve, you want to hone in on this because I think you thought this was kind of fun. I've highlighted on the screen here. 1 p.m. was the first find, the second bomb at 1:15. Do you know the actual times?
Yeah, I had it written down, but they're not accurate.
It's 12:43 for the first bomb, which was discovered, and the second one was found at 1:05. So they're off by a period of about 15 and 10 minutes. Why would that be the case, you think?
Because they didn't actually read the documents about defining it. There's just no. This document lacks the specificity for a case that is this important. You would want to have it to the second on this being the highest priority case for the FBI, other than maybe the Epstein case at this point.
So I want people to a little bit kind of have a grasp of what happened on that day. We're going to do a timeline here just for people sort of either refresh or maybe it's the first time you've ever heard it, and I don't think it will hurt anybody to have it. So let me pull up my little map here.
Also, for the cell phone pings, you'd need to know the exact stuff.
Let me see if I can actually put this on the screen for us. So at this is maybe not the best way to look at it, but it's not the worst way either. Let me just kind of cut in here. There is a, I'm cropping in real time here, which is kind of frustrating. There it goes. The pipe bomber was picked up on video at a very specific increment of time and a very specific way. That's why people believe that there may be, in fact, somebody involved in giving them insight into where the cameras were. So if you look on the screen right now, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see 734 in yellow. It's kind of small. So that's the first time that anyone sees the pipe bomber. And so people understand the first bomb that was placed was at the DNC. The second bomb was placed over at the RNC or the Capitol Hill Club. So they were placed in that order: DNC bomb first, RNC bomb second. But the discovery process was in the reverse. They found the RNC bomb first and then the DNC bomb second. So just so people understand where they happened, DNC was placed sometime between 7:34. I don't actually have the time on there, but between that and 8 p.m., you'll see the route in red is where they went. They ended up placing it basically just underneath me on the screen here. You can't see it, but that's where the DNC is. And then this circuitous route on the yellow, walking kind of back and forth, and then kind of meandering in the yellow, ending right back where started and disappeared off the cameras. That's a dead spot for the Capitol Hill cameras.
Can we also add that the DNC pipe bomb was originally supposed to be laid at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute by a black guy?
Right. Well, of course, we're going to get into all the sort of inconsistencies of that nonsense. But the best part of it is that this is all part of that route. So in the red, early on in the red route, on the northbound kind of leg of that second walk that they can see him on video, there was this stop at a bush. And the bush was the place where Steve Baker highlighted that the pipe bomber wearing the hoodie sat for 77 seconds, cross-legged, crisscross applesauce, Indian style, and was going through a backpack, probably put something underneath and then pulled something back out again, which is interesting because the United States Capitol Police officer who was assigned to go find any bombs anywhere in the entire Capitol area went directly to that bush straight away and got there in about like 8 minutes or 7 minutes or so, and then immediately turned around after screwing around at that spot and went to the actual bomb location over at the bench and found the bomb in 11 minutes and 7 seconds from the time that he and his partner unasked themselves from their vehicles, which they drove lights and sirens to get over to the Capitol Metro Station. So DNC bomb found second, placed first. The other one was started. There's an 8-minute camera gap between the yellow line there breaking and the upper line, which is behind Steve's head on the screen. And there's this walk past St. Peter's Church and then kind of a duck down and an alley and then popping up behind the Capitol Hill Club near the RNC. There was another potential placement of a bomb there. The first location, which there's a video footage. I think people have seen that picture. It's the pipe bomber kind of standing in front of this townhouse thing. There was a lodging house where members of Congress and some staffers live. And so that place was initially maybe targeted. Interestingly enough, the FBI honed in on that particular location because person of interest 2, who was part of the surveillance that I was originally assigned to, actually, in fact, did go and take pictures of that building. That's pretty weird. This is the guy that was going to write a book about numbers that never actually materialized because he didn't actually have an interest in numbers other than the ones that were on a dumpster where the bomb was found and the building where they might have dropped the bomb and then the actual location where the bomb was actually dropped. So that's all fun. Long and short, pipe bomber goes for number 2 at 8:08 and then goes in there on the red line, drops at the RNC, and then the yellow line is the egress and then disappears. Interestingly enough, in this criminal complaint, what we do not have is any statement that the law enforcement officer has seen this guy get out of a vehicle in the 39,000 videos that Chris Wray cited, and so did Steve D'Antuono. Nobody says we saw this person leave the vehicle and the vehicle was this guy's vehicle based on the license plate reader that we were able to establish. It's not in the probable cause statement. That seems super easy to tie him to that. What they also don't say in this probable cause statement, which I'm going to get in here, Steve gave us the weird sort of just weakness in the accuracy, and I want to continue on with this. The other thing they don't say, folks, is they don't say that during the times when we see the pipe bomber using the cell phone, that there was specific data hits on those towers, at least not the way that I read it. It's a little bit cumbersome because they're explaining sort of the methodology of how CAST or the Cellular Analysis Survey team works. Pipe bomber identified from surveillance footage. Anyway, they told you this is really a key part here. The IEDs were composed of commonly known as pipe bombs. They were both manufactured with a collection of components and parts and a main explosive charge. Components included a 1-inch by 8-inch pipe, of which tens of thousands are sold in the United States on any given year. End caps, which are affixed to the pipe. 14-gauge electrical wire, which is also common. Electrical clips or alligator clips, which are easy to find. You can strip them off something else or you can buy them. 9-volt battery, 9-volt battery connector, white kitchen timer, paper clips, steel wool, and homemade black powder. This homemade black powder is critical to there being a bomb. That's the bomb part of the bomb. And apparently, if you read the report that Just the News put out, the bomb wasn't very bomby because one of them had black powder that was functional and the other was not. All right, so then they talk about that period of time I told you. There's the 7:34 to 8:18. There's a gap in there of 8 minutes from 8 to 8:08 where the person is out of camera footage. The belief by the Blaze guys is that there was actually only one bomb carried at a time and that the second bomb was basically re-upped maybe during that off time. In any case, we know about the hooded figure and the glasses and the so on. And by the way, only people who wear prescription glasses can wear glasses. Is that true, Steve Friend?
No, I don't think so. I think they have these things called readers. You know, now that I'm getting to my 5th decade of life, I'm going to have to start looking at those things at Walmart.
Do you wear glasses?
I do.
Oh, wait. But you're not wearing glasses.
No. I can actually operate in the world without wearing the glasses that I have prescribed to me.
Or you could wear the glasses if you wanted to wear them.
Yeah, if I want to look intellectual like somebody on MSNBC or MS
so
Now.
Some people can wear glasses and not wear glasses, and then they can wear contact lenses or not wear contact lenses. And when they're going into the field to do this thing, they might make that choice. I don't know. I'm just curious. Glasses. Okay, so anyway, that was a big piece of it. In 2021, I'm going to go back to the doc here. Maybe you want to read this thing here. This is fun.
January 2021, the FBI conducted a reverse projection photogrammetry examination, i.e. a height analysis of the individual depicted in the video surveillance footage. The height analysis showed that the approximate distance from the ground to the top of the individual's head, including headwear, was 5 feet 7 inches with an error rate of 1.1 inches.
That's the first time I've seen the 1.1 inch error rate. I don't know if that's possible, but then we also have to figure out that the guy had shoes on. So he's apparently 5'6". Yeah, they were not Crocs. That turns out they were special shoes. So here's the other thing. So here's the identification. You've done a lot of, you've probably done more criminal complaints than most FBI agents, I would assume. Is that probably fair to guess?
Probably 2 orders of magnitude, yes.
It's not common for the FBI to use this tactic. Mostly we go to grand jury, we do indictments because they're long-term investigations. We know who our guy is. There's no exigent circumstances. We're not police. That's the way the FBI would work.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I wasn't super special. I was just being a cop, and I worked on Indian reservations where exigency was more commonly a thing. Complex investigations were more rare for me.
Sure, exactly. All right. How many identification of subjects have included 2 sentences that look like this, if you want to read them?
Brian J. Cole Jr. Cole is a 30-year-old resident of Woodbridge, Virginia. Cole is 5 feet 6 inches tall, and Cole wears corrective eyeglasses. Cole lives in a single-family house with his mother and other family members. Cole works in an office of bail bondsman in Northern Virginia.
That's it.
A little bit light on the details, like a physical description of Mr. Cole.
He's 5'6". That's it. That's all you need to know.
I mean, he did maybe go through an arm growth spurt in the last 5 years.
There's those arms. Okay.
The guy can tie his shoes without bending over.
Okay, so here we go with the purchases, and we're going to go and punch this up. So the FBI identified 1 bank account, which is a checking account, and 6 credit cards known as the accounts. Then they checked the credit records. They had 3 accounts for the time period between January 18 and 21. And then during the after time, he opened up some other credit card accounts. 2019 and 2020. Remember, the bombs were dropped January 5th of 2021. So we're going to go back into 2019. Cole purchased multiple items consistent with the components that were used to manufacture these bombs. They didn't say that they tied him with fingerprints or DNA or anything else, so that's pretty wild. The bombs were manufactured with a 1x8 galvanized pipe. They said that there were 26,000 of them sold in 2020, and 22,000 of the 26,000 were sold at Home Depot, and he was known to shop at Home Depot, so case closed. They also found that they were manufactured end caps. The end caps they sold closer to 233,000, and of those, a huge majority of them, 180,000-ish, were sold at Home Depot. They're talking about the purchases he made of pipe on June 1st, June 8th, and November the 16th of 2020. He made 2 different purchases from 2 different Home Depots in Northern Virginia. He bought those pipes. Now, that is 7 months, and roughly, month and a half, 2 months before the actual event, he was buying pipe.
Is that normally the timetable that most people who involve in building weapons of mass destruction, they typically buy the materials over half a year in advance of building their device that they have plotted out?
Well, here, let me just tell you something. When I'm trying to build a pipe bomb, what I like to do is I like to start from the end caps and then work my way in. And that is what the FBI sort of argues with this without saying it out loud. The end caps were used to close off the 8-inch pipe, but rather than buy the pipe first and then get the end caps at the same time, he decided to space it out in October of 2019, so 6-7 months earlier, he decided to go and buy end caps. Then also, again, he bought more end caps on March the 10th, and he bought more of them on June the 20th, more on July the 8th, and then more on September the 16th, which were not the same times that he's buying the other stuff. I don't know why they mentioned that the earlier stuff. It sounds like November the 16th, 2020, he bought pipe, and November the 16th, 2020, he bought end caps. That seems like that would be enough, but they wanted to make sure that he bought lots of end caps, which means it was actually part of his normal behavior to buy end caps for almost like a year and a half.
So he bought all of these components before the election that drove so many people to the Capitol on January 6th, 2021, because apparently Brian Cole Jr. knew that there was going to be some...
Well, he's autistic. I thought they just... Isn't autistic the same thing as you can see the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's... Okay. I saw Rain Man and I saw a Minority Report. They're basically the same movie.
Okay, well, let's talk about 9-volt batteries because that was the power source that was used. The pipe bombs were manufactured using a 9-volt battery connector, and they had attached red and black wires, which are the most common colors outside of white, I guess, when it comes to buying them, and 14 gauge wires are pretty common. The best part is this, is that he bought 5 9-volt connectors November 12th and December the 28th of 2019. So he went to go build not just the end caps first, but he also was buying the battery connector. There were fewer than 8,000 of them sold during that time frame, and they were bought from Micro Center. Here's the really weird thing that's going to make people who are like privacy nuts a little bit concerned. They were bought from Micro Center in Northern Virginia, which is like a major Radio Shack on steroids, including cash purchases in the December transaction. I guess he must have had like a rewards card is what I've been able to figure out. Do you think he had a rewards card and used his e-rewards and then cash in order to hide himself so no one knew what he was buying, or what was going on?
He is, after all, a criminal mastermind.
Mastermind.
Built all these devices before the election and also had enough material to build more devices. And even though he didn't get caught for 5 years, said, you know, I think we're done here. And he did it over such a long period of time that the likes of a Khalif Sheikh Mohammed, who planned 9/11 over years, would be like, bro, speed it along.
Okay, here we go. Both pipe bombs were manufactured using a white kitchen dash style timer. Cole purchased 2 white kitchen timers, not style, from a Walmart in Northern Virginia on or about June 3rd, 2020, which is again about 7 months before the bombs were dropped. No mention of whether these are the same style, model, whether there's a difference between a kitchen style and a kitchen timer. I'm not clear what the style timer is. There may be something going on there, but they just mentioned that he did happen to, in fact, purchase white kitchen timers. So 6 tubes, which all align with the 5 battery connectors, which now align down to the 2 functional devices. But we're doing this in a time frame that means that somehow he knew he was going to buy random things, but then he was also going to only make 2 functional devices forever and then cash out Hall of Famer. Just saying, all of this stuff is bizarre because I read this and I go like, okay, so he's a guy who buys home improvement stuff. That could be it. Do you have more than that would be my question.
He's like Bruce Wayne, who wants to avoid detection for buying the Batman mask.
He wants 10,000 of them.
He buys 10,000 of them.
Except he bought 6, and he bought them at different times. Okay, pipe bombs use a mixture of 14-gauge red wire and black electrical. Some of you just found out that you have the components to also make a pipe bomb in your house, minus the bomb part of the bomb, which is not mentioned in here. They were packed with steel wool, which is also a highly controlled thing that you can buy at any grocery store and also at Home Depot, and he bought those December 4th of 2020. This is my favorite part. Additional components used to make bombs and facilitate manufacturing of a pipe bomb include things like safety goggles that he bought, or safety glasses. You might have some of those. Wire stripping tool. I'm kind of embarrassed that he didn't have a wire stripper until November 14th of 2020. That is an embarrassing thing for any man, no matter what your age or your autism. Wire nuts, which were used to hold things together when you're working on electrical stuff, November 14th. So none of this stuff was possible. And then he bought sandpaper. No clear identification of what the grit of the sandpaper was. So we have a lot of questions about that. Sandpaper. He had a machinist file that he bought in November of 2020. Also embarrassing not to own a machinist file if you're a man. I think I have an entire drawer of them. Some of them are 50 years plus old. They work forever. And then in COVID, nobody bought protective gloves or disinfecting wipes unless they were building a pipe bomb. All these things together equal bomb factory, which means the FBI will be in my garage very shortly.
I was going to say, as an aside, I don't know if you've ever been on a search warrant that's being conducted by the ATF, but essentially every garage in America is a bomb-making factory.
It's constructive intent in all of your garages, right? And to be fair, I probably could create bombs out of the stuff in my garage if I sat down and thought about it. I know I have end caps for 1-inch pipe. I know I have those, and I think I probably have some loose, random 1-inch pipe. I don't know what the length of it is, but I would almost bet you, I know I have alligator clips hanging around. I know I have some 14-gauge wire in those colors. I have some other wire as well. I have multiple strippers, and I have multiple sets of sandpaper, and I have lots of machine files, and doggone it, I've got all the fun stuff that they're saying in this thing. So that's kind of funny to me. The one thing I noticed conspicuously is that's the end of the materials. Nothing about the bomb part of the bomb that goes...
No black powder.
Homemade black powder is critical and not addressed in this particular thing. Then we get into the cell phone stuff. So we'll just do this real quickly because this is actually kind of pedantic and kind of old and boring. But they give you kind of an assessment of how the FBI cast or cellular work is done. And what they said is they identified a cell phone that he was in possession of. And they got the cell phone towers from January the 5th in the relevant time period. This should have been the end of the case. This should have been the beginning and the end. We found this guy. We interviewed him. We found that he had the bomb making materials. This is it. This is Steve Friend's 3-week investigation right here. The way that these towers work is kind of interesting. The provider details and the vicinity. Do you want to read? Have you done cell phone tower dumps and found people that way, Steve?
Yeah, sure have.
Okay. Will you read this little piece here for folks?
Yeah, each of the provider's cell phone towers in the vicinity of the RNC and DNC have sectors that provide coverage for the particular tower. Each sector of a cell phone tower provides approximately 120 degrees of coverage due to real-world conditions that various forms of interference. The actual coverage on any particular day for a particular sector can extend beyond 120 degrees of coverage or be limited to less than 120 degrees of coverage.
So highly specific. How much is 120 degrees of a circle?
1/3.
Okay, so that's 1/3 of the things in front of you. That's like, that's a lot of space. Consider that in your own room. Look in front of you and put your hands out at 120 degree angles. So you're going to be wider probably and almost, certainly beyond your shoulder width.
It's wider than a baseball field.
It's wider than a baseball diamond's thing. So here you go. And so these guys went and they used the cell phone analysis survey team, the Kash teams, who are highly effective and they're very competent. And I have no problem with any of the work that they do. But what this tells me is not the most detailed Kash report, having gotten very, very detailed down to like a meter, because they overlapped a bunch of things. It was in a particular rural area. And I've also gotten some that are like completely useless garbage where they're like, here's the thing. And it looks like a flashlight from like a cartoon where it just shows a beam going out into the world. And they're like, these somewhere in this beam. And you're like, you gotta be shitting me. Like that's 1,000 yards of buildings at 120 degree angle, completely useless. There's 75 apartment buildings in there. There's like, there's 7,000 residents in this little thing. We have no idea who's going to be the drug dealer we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I've had escaped prisoners who we were trying to look for and getting the constant feedback from the provider. And they did an exigency, an emergency release of that information. And it was in town, right? It was in Sioux City, Iowa. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's an entire city. It's 80,000 people there. I'm not going to be able to go door to door,
but he's in the
Boston
city,
Marathon
Steve.
style.
Exactly. All right. So the provider records show that Cole's cell phone was connected to the provider cell phone it was in the area of the RNC. They're real specific about how they say this. Engaged in approximate 7 data transaction sessions between 7:39 and 8:24. My question was, okay, here's your data transactions. They occurred at 7:39, 44, 59, 14, 23, 24, another transaction at 37. So they tell you when they happened. Let's see here. It does show that video surveillance footage shows that the individual with the pipe bomb placed the bombs, turned at a specific direction, but doesn't say that they were data interactions that I'm seeing. This is what I was trying to find. The cell phone interacted with the provider tower 126187 at 7:44:36. The video surveillance shows at that time the person who placed the pipe bombs walked east. They're talking about walking, but not where the data interactions were, because we know that he was on the phone either talking to people or texting and so on. So this is the thing that I'm kind of shady on when I'm reading this. It's not clear that they don't have that information. It just doesn't seem like it's there. And it also is telling us about a 120 degree thing. So generally speaking, he was either driving around doing DoorDash or delivering bombs. All of this stuff is maybe their better piece of it, but this should have been done, I would think, in a couple of days when they did the tower dumps, which is why we were trying to go out and do what we were doing. This says 8:14. The cell phone interacted with provider tower 45111. It faces west, approximately 255 degrees. And that location is 101 Independence, Southeast Washington, D sector. The video surveillance shows that at 8:14, which is 15 seconds prior to that interaction, the individual who placed the pipe bombs turned and walked west. So I don't know that they're saying that this is the same phone was walking in there. This feels like they're trying to make a connection for someone who doesn't ever use these things.
Yes, it seems like they're
Am I wrong? Am I wrong on that?
It seems like there's two channels that are going on TV, and you're flipping between the two of them, and you're watching a football game, and then you're watching a Hallmark movie, and you're saying like, well, with 3:44 to go in the third quarter, the quarterback took the field, and then she found out that her old flame was wanting to get back with his ex. Like they're not related. They just happen to be going on at the same time.
Okay, so the next piece is kind of fun because it says, registered owner, this guy's a registered owner of a 2017 Nissan Sentra, Virginia license plates, and at 7:10, his car was observed on a license plate reader, Capital South exit 395. That's where he was. That's what this looks like. This is 395. And apparently he was driving through the interstate, which is the way that everybody I know went home to Virginia. I'm just telling you, this is the interstate, is the main interstate running through Washington, D.C., and then it goes over here, and then it goes home to where he lives, which is down here in Woodbridge. It's a massive road. It turns into I-95, which goes all the way down to Steve's house. Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I-95 passes right by the humble abode of the Friends.
So here you have it. This is like one of the most trafficked roads in Washington, D.C., and apparently he went by on that, and that was at 7:10. What I see missing, and I find this to be really troubling, where's the part where he parked? Where's the part where they tracked him getting out of the car, and then they tracked the hooded figure that went along with this license plate, which is what you'd normally do if you're doing that. All right. Then they go on. Then they just move on. They're like, yeah, he had a car, and it was roughly in the vicinity. So this is all sort of circumstantial stuff to me. And like I said, I think it's thin. It doesn't mean that it's not good. But then
what about the removal of the one device and putting it to another device that happened subsequently? Does that coincide with him driving up and down 95 when he changed his mind magically and went back?
Well, that was all before he got there. That was at 7:10. That's before the pipe bomber appears on the video camera at 7:34. So we've got him driving in the vicinity of Washington, D.C. 24 minutes before they see him on camera. So then it's kind of like, okay, well, where did he go? Did you not trace the pipe bomb? Like the FBI's had 39,000 video files, and Steve Baker's guys were able to track the entire route, including stuff that was not included. They know where the blind spots are. They know where there's missing. Surely the FBI went and found surveillance cameras, ring cameras, and so on during that day and said, this is the likely route. We need what you got. That didn't, apparently, that's not in this probable cause statement, which is bizarre. And they immediately just move on to say, during some times, this is really great. Other contacts with Washington, D.C., the city where like hundreds of thousands of people live. He bought things between January of 2019 and 2021. He made 5 purchases in Washington, D.C. I don't know if that's trying to say that he doesn't go there very often, but every year he made 1 appearance there, basically. And then a couple in December 5th and December 14th of 2020. 3 weeks before the pipe bombs were placed on December the 14th, he had food from a restaurant at 1st and D Street, Southeast.
Was that implying that he was doing some recon in the area?
Allegedly. I don't know. And for the reasons that stated above, we believe that there's probable cause to believe that he did these things. And no account that the bombs were viable, nothing about the black powder. All of this stuff is just, it's just kind of goofy. I mean, like I said, it doesn't mean that there's not enough eventually. And if they had done this work, like if they did this 5 years ago and the exigent circumstances was somebody has a bomb and we need to make sure that nobody does it again so we can get people into the buildings for Congress, I'd be like, okay, public safety issue. Maybe we fudge it a bit. You had 5 years. And now you have the district attorney, I'm sorry, not the district attorney, the United States attorney for the District of DC saying, this investigation is ongoing, it's just beginning. And Dan Bongino's like, you're going to find out more. When we find out more, we're looking for more. We're pretty comfortable with what we've got. Why are you comfortable? What are we doing? It's crazy.
I mean, without the bomb part of the bomb, I don't know how you actually get a judge to sign off on this.
Here's the real things that I think are going to be really problematic. Police interrogation tactics fail on people with autism. There is a very, very high percentage of people who have they've confessed to things that they didn't do. And the Innocence Project continues to find these people and exonerates them because the Reid technique is known to produce false confessions with people who have autism. And apparently they went in there and they interrogated this guy, hence the grandmother saying, yeah, we shouldn't, I hope he's not talking, but of course he would be talking. They have a couple of different stories in this article. This is coming from Time Magazine, which we don't have to have any love for, but this is a current and a well-known thing for people in law enforcement. I've had retired cops reach out to me and say, this has been something that I've been getting training in all the way back into the 90s. There's a well-known issue with self-incrimination under pressure using the Reid tactics when somebody is doing this. And there's a little piece of the screen right here. I think this is a pretty good one here. I'm going to try and read that one out. Is that too small for you?
It's a little too small. I need my glasses.
You can have this. According to the Innocence Project, DNA exoneration since 1989, 29% included false confessions. Half of those were under the age of 21. 9% of them had mental health issues known at the trial. There's an issue, and this is well documented. There's some autism articles that we've seen. If you guys follow my X feed, you've probably seen that as well. But all of those things make me a little bit suspicious. Not nearly as much as this, because the whole charge is based on, what is it again?
The bomb.
They have to be
viable.
They have to have a pulse. They have to be live bombs, right?
Yeah. They have to be able to actually explode. They can't just be well, if it had been a bomb, so we got to charge it.
Here we go. 4 years later, examining the state of the investigation from the RNC and the DNC pipe bombs. This is coming from Loudermilk's committee. The best part is, even in the executive summary, they use the word viable in air quotes because they don't seem to believe that it, in fact, is a viable device, even in this. As they explain what was done, they ask all the questions. Why was someone unable to find it? Why did they failure to secure the perimeters? These are the questions that have made everybody suggest. How about this? There's a major conflict of information with the FBI saying that there was corrupted cell phone data from the major carriers. A senior official, Steve D'Antuono, who we played earlier, said that there was corrupted cell data and that the FBI could not have used it. So that was a claim that was being made. They supposedly went looking for people who searched for pipe bomb in D.C. They wanted to see if anybody was trying to find out what was going on. Blah, 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 blah. Here's where it gets fun. I'm going to get down to page 73. Page 73. This is a long report, folks, and not everybody's read all of it, but you can do an easy search. So let's do this. Here's the best part. Page 73 of the document. It's 74 if you're looking on the side. Okay, nearly 4 years after they were planted, there's contradictory testimony raising questions. Part C, the FBI assessed that the pipe bombs to be viable, but refused to specify how determinations of viability were established. We're about to get weird. According to the FBI, this is how little faith the Loudermilk group had in the FBI's actual words. Both pipe bombs consisted of a 60-minute kitchen timer and were quote-unquote viable. They're using air quotes. Explosive devices that could have quote-unquote detonated and quote-unquote seriously injured or killed innocent people or bystanders. Furthermore, the FBI says that the suspect planted the pipe bombs the night of before January 6th, raising questions how an explosive device with a 60-minute timer could detonate approximately 16 hours later. Given the suspect's use of 60-minute timers, it remains unclear whether the pipe bombs were capable of detonating on the day, considering they did not. And the FBI defined the term viable. They want to know what that means. Here it comes. Ready? This is the best part. Let's highlight this and let's zoom in a little bit. If you're listening, can't see what we're doing. We're going to blow this thing up so you can read it. I bet Steve Friend can read that even without glasses. What do you think, Steve?
According to an FBI bomb technician who agreed to speak to the committee staff on the condition of anonymity for fear of reprisal. Why would they have fear of
Nobody
reprisal?
fears reprisal. The FBI takes every whistleblower seriously.
The FBI's use of the term, quote, viable is a deviation from the standard description used by bomb technicians. Traditionally, bomb technicians deliberately avoid using vague language, choosing instead to refer to a bomb as a device, if it would function as designed or as a hoax. In the case of the pipe bombs, it is unclear why the FBI insists on using a vague, non-standard description.
I was also told that these were inert devices. I had another friend who in real time remembers being told that his buddy who worked in that bomb technician program said that the information went out. These were not viable. They were inert, which is a way that we use it. So you've got the committee reporting on that. You have a whistleblower going, an FBI bomb technician, which is not a very big group of people, telling the Judiciary Committee November 22nd of 2024 in an informal interview that this is the thing that they believe to be happening because the information went out and that it was in fact a deviation from the standard move. We've also been told that the Capitol Police, who had their hazardous response unit there, would normally have taken a pipe bomb, which is a low-order explosives, and it doesn't necessarily have the same power as like C4 or dynamite or Petin or some of the other types of explosives, and you put that in a containment device, and then you transport it down to the demo range where you can study it, find out what's going on. Instead, they detonated it on the street for some reason, and it went like this. You know what the sound of the explosion was?
Was it like a poof?
It was kind of like this. It was like...
Even better. Like a
it was like a choking
emphysema
cough.
patient.
It was a COPD-er. It did exactly go boom.
Because viable has no actual meaning, but people perceive societally that it does have a meaning, and that's where they play in the terminology. They could say viable, and that's like democracy. It means whatever we want it to mean. In this case, viable means it would have been a bomb if it had been a bomb.
If it had been a bomb. I want to show this to people. I will put this in the show description in the notes. For those of you who are trying to keep score at home, this is an option for you. This is the unclassified report. This is the pictures that were released. It was produced for the House Judiciary Committee. It's not for external dissemination, but then the FBI authorized release of it to John Solomon. So that came out. And so there you have it. And they have all the stories of the fusing. If you want to read about what it is, if you're an EOD type, if you want to understand how it was connected, it's all right here. And this is the various different devices. This is the one that I think that they actually broke off Right here on the screen, you're seeing a little missing connection here. So there either should have been a wire nut maybe or another alligator clip based on the fact that there's a couple of alligator clips in these places. So unknown. I don't know if there was any DNA recovered, but nothing on that is actually listed. There's your end caps. There's the drill, which would have had to happen. Did he have a drill? Did he have what would you need on that one? You'd need like maybe a drill press. Is that something he had access to? Unknown. Again, here's your little kitchen timer. I don't know if this is a kitchen timer or a kitchen style timer. So Steve, maybe you can, what do you think that is? Is that
to dig through the archives to figure
this
out
one
which
says
one
kitchen.
it is.
This one says kitchen timer on the actual document. So we're going to take this as a kitchen timer, not a kitchen style timer. In any case, here's some things that they have. You can find the pictures of all the little pieces here and some little insignias on these. And there's some writing. That's interesting. I didn't know the writing was written on there. Rear facing, so on and so forth. Is that going to be a handwriting match? Maybe. Anyhow, we have a pretty interesting little case of not very much put in the probable cause statement. And I don't know why there was exigent circumstances. They didn't even evacuate the neighbors, it turns out, when they did the search warrant yesterday. If you had a bomb case, just out of curiosity, just hypothetically, you know somebody built bombs. You know that they had extra materials that could maybe constitute more bombs if they had access to homemade black powder, which you don't have any evidence of, apparently. Would you go and like knock on the neighbor's door before you guys surrounded with your call out? And would you be like, hey, there's a gas leak, we need you to leave right now? Or would you be like, hey, maybe you could take a ride for the next 45 minutes and don't come back?
Yes, that would be a reasonable thing to do for public safety if public safety is actually one of your highest priorities.
Mm-hmm. But is it?
No. We're not worried about the process or the safety. We're worried about the outcome. And we've been sort of like circulating around this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked for a little bit of latitude on this because I'm going to be a little bit dour and serious and less snarky on this one.
Good.
The January 6th pipe bomb case, as it was revealed by Joe Hanneman, Steve Baker, Armitage, I think connected the dots when they identified Voldemort, Shawnee Kirchhoff, Capitol Police officer, connected it finally in saying that January 6th and the pipe bomb were probably a government put-up job. And now, if there are people back there who are Marilyn Melky style at the FBI, worried about what our foreign adversaries might think if it came to light that the FBI was actually involved in a Reichstag fire modern day, and they had to cover it up, and I don't care what the justification is, we're worried Marilyn Melky style. Maybe this guy was this Cole character was a entrapment playbook person who you already had on the hook, and what does it matter what sort of case we put him in, this one or the other? Maybe he's Chester the molester pedophile who you've got on a kiddie porn case, and you said, hey, why don't you just plead guilty to this one because the time will go easier for you in prison as a WMD guy rather than a pedophile. Or maybe you're in a position of executive leadership and you're just so damn thirsty to get a win for dad so that the president will be proud of you finally and your fans will return and have devotion to you. Whatever the motivation is. If you were doing another put-up job on this guy, and I think we spelled out a pretty compelling case that this probably ain't the guy, then may God have mercy on your soul. And I'm going to end with this. I'm going to bring out my inner Commodus. You better pray to Gaia or Vishnu or whatever your maker is, that real Steve Friend is never in a position to be an instrument of God's wrath, because I will be merciful. I won't give you a trial and a hanging. I'll allow you to breathe every breath that your body will have for the rest of its natural life inside of a box. And then when it ultimately fades to black, that's when real wrath begins.
Let's lay out the bigger problem with all of this nonsense. Because I agree with you. The put-up job possibilities, it's like, okay, fine, that's a thin complaint. And you've got somebody who's an easy victim and doesn't fit the pattern that any of the people who talked about it, who were super serious about it previously, and they're not worried about whether or not there's a government connection or whatsoever. It's not part of that right now. I've got a timeline here and some things that I don't know that we've shared on this show. I think I've done it on some other podcasts, but I want people to get it. Because the stuff that Steve Baker and that Joe Hanneman and Armitage and some of the others are out there doing, and the things that I'm being briefed on a regular basis, it's really freaking damning. And it's impossible to say that this guy acted without additional outside influences if this is the guy, and it doesn't seem like this is the guy, because how on earth did he connect to these people? So here we go. On January 13th, 2021, my squad, ID 21, Special Operations Group, surveillance team from Washington Field Office was assigned to go watch Person of Interest 3. Person of interest 3 lived in Falls Church, Virginia. We were put on that door, on that place, because of a very specific connection. A guy went and did weird things in Washington, D.C. I'll cover what those are in a second. You'll probably know them, Steve. Did weird things in D.C., and he used a Metro card, and he was picked up by a specific vehicle, and he used an Uber account that were not his, but belonged to person of interest 3, whose door we ended up outside of. And then they connected, it was actually person of interest 2, a different person than who lives there. The person who lives there is a tall black man. The person who we were looking for was a white guy. It turns out it wasn't actually the boyfriend of Shani Kirkhoff, who was a Capitol police officer. POI2 was not that. I'll freely admit I got that part wrong, because the guy got off the train in Washington, D.C. on January the 5th. And he took off his red hat, which was probably a MAGA hat from what we can tell. And he put on a hunting cap. The hunting cap had flaps for ears and a bill, and then he put on sunglasses, and then he put on a COVID mask, which we would call maybe tradecraft. Would that fall into tradecraft if you were doing an analysis?
Master of disguise, yes.
He went and did a costume change. And then he rolled directly to the place where the pipe bomb was found. The first one was found, which was the second one that was placed at the RNC. And it was placed in darkness. He went there in daylight and he took a picture of a dumpster because of the numerals that were on the dumpster for an upcoming book he was writing about numerals on dumpsters that he never ended up writing. And the Blaze knows the identity of this guy and knows that he's never written a book, never published a book, never done anything on social media about numerals. So then he went around, and I've got a little timeline here, comes into town, starts taking pictures, rolls around for like several hours, goes directly to the dumpster after doing a costume change, gets off a train and goes to a dumpster in Washington, D.C.
Like you do. Want to do, yes.
Then during the day, he took other pictures at the congressional boarding house where the pipe bomber was seen stopping that night, and then walks all day long and takes no pictures. They've basically established the entire pattern of this guy moving around all day long without taking pictures around the Capitol. All right? And then just before his train is going to leave, going back out to the suburbs in Falls Church, which goes across the river, he goes back to the dumpster and he takes a picture of it in the darkness. Now, a totally skeptical type of person who might make some analytical leaps would say, why would you do that? Well, you would take one so that you can tell the person who's placing it at night where to place it, and another so you can tell the person who's going to find it in the daylight what it looks like. That'd be a really easy thing to do. So apparently this guy has a dumpster numeral fetish that only exists for those dumpsters in daylight and in darkness, and on that day specifically, and never again.
And that particular dumpster, because there's only one dumpster in Washington, D.C.
Now, Julie Kelly, the great Julie Kelly, and the editor of all January 6 stories, has recounted that this guy was an itinerant Christian preacher, and that he traveled overseas, and he lived in the South, and he came in and connected with his old friend, person of interest 3. And he did. They connected on social media after like 50 years of not being in touch. And they got in touch on social media. And then, like you do with all people that you haven't talked to in 5 decades, they were like, hey, man, would you like to hang out at my house and stay with me during this contentious rally time that the president is going to be speaking at the Ellipse? Would you mind if I came in and stayed with you? By the way, I'm not going to bring any of my personal items. So can I use your Uber account? And can I use your Metro card? And can I stay at your house and not put down a credit card or like give any evidence that I'm actually there? And the friend is like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. By the way, they no longer have any connections on social media because apparently, unbeknownst to us, in January of this year, they had a big falling out and they blocked each other. So now they're no longer in touch. So what is the story of this guy? This guy worked for a Christian organization that goes overseas and does missionary work, right? Except he has no visible source of income. He disappeared off the employment map for 17 years after graduating from college, and then popped back up doing missionary work, doing as many as 80 trips a year overseas, which would totally not be interesting to an intel asset or an intel
organization, yes.
And let me add on top of that, if you Google, and I'm not going to say the name of it, but if you Google the Christian missionary group that he works with and the letters CIA, you will get multiple hits from FOIAs indicating that the CIA has worked with this organization. People need to understand how wild that is, because there's a group called National Resource Group. Do you ever deal with NRG?
No, I didn't deal with them. I know they are, though.
You know who they are. NRG does a recruitment program with the FBI. They let agents like Steve or I, when we were working there, go over there and become CIA case officers. And then we work domestically if you were going to go be that. I have friends who did it. And they go and recruit people in the United States who are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents that do 80 trips overseas a year so that they can get intel on places that they can't send CIA case officers because it's too dangerous. So you take people who have already plausible cover stories. Or maybe they're a retired military asset that ends up doing things, or a retired intelligence guy that ends up doing things overseas with another room. So now you've got this problem. So we've got person of interest 2 staying with person of interest 3, and we're watching that person a week after January 6th. And then they cleared him because he was obviously writing a book about dumpster numbers, even though he never wrote the book about dumpster numbers. And that guy still exists. Blaze knows who this is. Okay.
Wasn't he also cleared via telephonic interview?
Person of interest 3 was. You ever clear somebody who was a person of interest in a case without actually like talking to them if they were in the same area that you could go to?
Not if they were involved
Let's
in a
say it was a
case that had
20-minute
public
drive.
interest levels of weapons of mass destruction.
All right, so that's part of it. The next problem is that the next day, a woman finds the pipe bomb at the RMC, bomb number 2 that was placed, and then it goes out as an alert. And the Capitol Police released the counter surveillance units. They had 3 teams of 2 guys, so 6 officers in pairs. So these 3 teams go out, and one of those teams runs out and finds the second pipe bomb, which was placed first, in 11 minutes and 7 seconds. And they were delayed en route because they stopped at the exact bush that the pipe bomber had sat at the night before for 77 seconds on the ground, like a totally regular dude who sits crisscross Indian style or crisscross applesauce and likes to go into his bag, and then had to replace something there. And they looked twice under that bush. It wasn't once, it was twice. You can see it in Steve Baker's feed, and you can find it in mine. Are you following?
Oh,
and
I'm
then,
following.
In a world record, he found the bomb in 11 minutes and 7 seconds. In all the bushes in all the world, they happened to find the right one next to the DNC where they were able to do. And then what did they do after that, Steve? After they found this bomb so quickly, what did they do?
Well, very much like Brian Cole, they didn't go for another device. They just high-fived and
Why?
Gave each other helmet stickers because they knew there were only 2 devices.
Now we're going to get even weirder because the on-scene commander at the RNC bomb, as I understand it, working for the ATF's bomb squad, was a guy named Ashawn Benedict. And Ashawn Benedict went from being a guy at the ATF to going to the United States Capitol Police as their chief of intelligence, or he was a deputy chief or something to that effect. He took over the job of Yogananda Pittman. I'm not 100% sure what that spot in the org chart was, but Yogananda Pittman was in charge. She was the top commander on the day of, when it came to what was going on January 6th at the Capitol.
One who was refusing to evacuate the members of Congress. Almost like they wanted the rioters to be in there with members of Congress.
So the guy who was in charge of the bomb squad on January 6th for the ATF ends up at Capitol Police and is the babysitter for the future of the people at the counter surveillance unit because his purview also covered the counter surveillance unit. And the day after Steve Baker released his story saying that they found this bomb in 11 minutes and 7 seconds, he retired with no warning. No big deal, nothing suspect about that. Now, what about the guy that found the bomb?
I believe he was promoted to a position of prominence that would allow him to liaise with other members of our federal law enforcement apparatus.
He is the FBI liaison from Capitol Police to FBI, which was doing the investigation into the pipe bomb. And so that's where he went. He's referred to as backpack guy. There's another guy that was called man bun guy. These are Tom Massey's words, and they've never been appropriately interviewed or deposed by members of Congress. And by the way, they're actually off limits when it comes to going out and doing this. When they opened the new J6 committee, which was done under this new speaker, the explicit carve out for authorization of this particular J6 committee was, you must not look into the United States Capitol Police in any way, shape, or form. They are off limits. They are out of bounds for you to be able to do your investigation. And by the way, if you look at the Loudermilk report, they also carved out the 51 phone numbers that involved law enforcement, which were exempted from any kind of scrutiny.
So you're allowed to look everywhere except where the guilty parties are.
this is the contention. This is what Deputy Dan used to say, which is why I played his clip so early on, because he said it was an inside job, and an inside job would mean people who had access and resources and the knowledge beforehand to be able to go out there, and then the cover-up part of it, which, by the way, Barry Loudermilk said to Laura Logan, which is why I played that clip, and everyone who sort of assumes if there is not some sort of conspiracy that involves more people, which is why even Lori Ingram was asking that question, are you expecting to find more people involved? If you don't, Tom Massey told me yesterday that it's bullshit. It cannot exist because we know these facts. Now, it even gets a little bit worse from that because the person who was the lead investigator for Tom Massey was a guy named Marshall Yates on his part of the committee when they were generating these reports. And Marshall Yates is now the assistant director for congressional affairs. He's the FBI's liaison going back to Congress and the Capitol Police. So you've taken a guy from the bomb squad and made him the top guy over the CSU units. You've taken the CSU guy and you've made him now the liaison that decides what goes back and forth between the FBI. You've taken somebody from a member of Congress's staff and put him at the FBI, and now he tells the Congress people what they can have from the FBI. And you've moved Yogananda Pittman out. And then the woman that they accused of being the bomber found a job at the CIA, which is a lateral move at best, and her social media was all scrubbed, and she got $1,000 an hour or more deep state attorney who was the general counsel for the DHS under Joe Biden, which she cannot afford and you and I cannot afford, but is now representing her, even though he doesn't have experience in defamation. And this would be one of the bigger mistakes that they made, showing their hand. And by the way, she was alibied by puppies, of which she only has one dog, and the dog is a retired greyhound, which is probably a couch potato, which is why you don't play with it as a puppy. Like, retired greyhounds just hang out with you because they used to be racers and they're usually injured and beat up. The dog's name is Bella. She has one of them. The Blaze has interviewed the dog sitter, has found the reviews of the dog sitter, which were posted online, and we have the adoption information and the adoption agency for the dog. And the dog, I think in the first time ever, did you ever alibi anybody with a dog video?
No, can't say I have.
Weird. Why?
Because that doesn't happen unless it's being invented whole cloth out of nowhere in order to make sure that the person who is tying the January 6th Capitol events to the January 6th pipe bomb definitively, and leading us to the ultimate conclusion that the government was involved in a Reichstag fire style conspiracy against a significant swath of the American people that day and ruined lives and put people in prison who didn't need to be in prison, was tied back to the government. We had to move beyond that, which is why CNN is uber interested in covering down on Brian Cole. Either that or they're racist.
They had to be live bombs.
You know, folks, this case involved millions of pieces of data.
Millions of pieces of data, live bombs, massive, great police work. And then here's the other question that came up, because this is my other favorite piece. They went through and they did some press last night, which is not necessary, but they did. They went out and did press, and the question came down, why didn't Chris Wray's FBI find this? You heard that they said it was a priority, and the claim is they just didn't care. You said this was about 3 weeks worth of investigative work. I tend to agree, especially if they were actually going to look, if there was only 186 cell phones that pinged in the area at all. And Dan said there was no new investigative work done, that the data was already there. So we should assume that what's in the Loudermilk report actually constitutes what the FBI file was. 186 phone numbers. And you just got to ping them down. You could interview 186 people with the Washington field office.
With the Washington field office, those are the resources that you could marshal there would get it done in an afternoon.
I'm just not buying their story, and I don't buy it. And also the panic and the fervor at which they went after this to try to make things go away. That's the part that makes me go, I don't believe what you're saying. Here's the Hannity asking the question. And you guys tell me if is this the same energy as Podcast Dan? Because that's where we started.
Is you did not find any new evidence. It was all there, had been there for the longest period of time. The only difference between you and Director Wray and the Biden DOJ is they did not prioritize it. Why? And I know it wasn't easy to solve, but you did it in 8 months.
Yeah. Sean, I don't know what the hell this prior leadership team was doing outside of, targeting political opponents, weaponizing the FBI, destroying its reputation, embarrassing agents that are doing really good work out there, catching terrorists, CCP spies and everyone else. It's almost like they were intentionally trying to decimate faith in institutions. It's horrifying. I don't know what they were doing. I can tell you what happened, though, when we got there, the director and I. My first meeting, I swore in, and I kid you not, probably 15 minutes later, and the people who are in the meeting know, I said, when I get in there, I want a full brief on this pipe bomber case on day one. And I looked at the case agent after getting a full brief on what they'd done, and they had done a pretty extensive amount of work. They had chased down, I think, thousands of leads, 6,000 plus interviews had been conducted, hundreds of tips, and it still was relatively stale, the case. And I grabbed the case agent on the way out, and I said, you're going to get me this guy. You're going to track this guy down, and you're going to find him. You're going to get me this guy. I want him. And that started what's been almost a 9-month operation right now to make sure that we could get full accountability and transparency to the American public and find this guy. And today we did. But
it seems hollow. It doesn't seem genuine. It doesn't seem like he's satisfied. It's almost like a sympathetic feeling that I have. Like, this is a hostage video, almost. He's compelled to do this. He's kind of a spent force. That's what it sounds like.
It's really hard to believe that they said, we didn't get any new information. And again, I'm telling you, 186 phones are the ones that are outlined in there. We've had this for apparently they didn't get anything new. Except that there was something new.
3 weeks ago?
The best part of it is there was something new that he actually claims that there was, in fact, something new. And I think I've got this clip as well, which is my favorite part of it. He says nothing changed. And then he was like, well, actually, I do remember the moment that this actually was shared with me. And I got to find out where that right little piece is here. Oh, this is the moment. He actually did this at the press conference. So nothing new, but this was the moment.
To solving the case.
Dan, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I was smiling at you because I certainly remember the moment. Darren remembers it too. He said, are you sitting down? Called me on the phone. I said, oh boy, why? Is this bad news? And he said, I think we got him. What exactly that tip was, we're going to have to pass on that for right now while obviously we're in the prologue of a long book. This is just the beginning. This is not the end of the investigation, as you all well know, having reported on these for a long time. There's interviews to be conducted. The search warrant processing scene is not even done. So we're at the early stages. So that's the only reason I hesitate to tell you what the exact tip was. But yes, that was absolutely the moment. And it was due to the diligent and incredible work of a team in the Washington field office that came in and just scoured through this over and over and over and over again.
And to be clear, that was the same Washington field office that he said was in on it and was part of the cover-up. Am I wrong, Steve?
No, I think that the podcast Dan would probably disagree quite a bit with Podium Dan there at that.
This is the report from Loudermilk from January. By early February 2021, that's about, 4 weeks in, 3 weeks in?
Yes, yeah. I mean, you're talking about 30 days after the incident itself.
Yeah. So the FBI identified 186 phone numbers of interest derived from the FBI's analysis of a geofence warrant and cell phone tower dumps. According to internal documents obtained by the subcommittee, 36 of those phone numbers were assigned for interviews. 98 of them required further investigative steps. 51% of them were identified as not needing further action because the phones belonged to law enforcement or persons on the exclusion list. Are they in there? Like, is this guy in there in that 186? How bad are we? Who else is in there? Who's on the 51 that were excluded? And why was that not answered? Doesn't that seem like that would be really relevant? Here's what apparently changed. I got a John Solomon clip. You ready? This is pretty gross.
Send it.
Here's John Solomon, who, whatever. I'm not going to make any disparaging comments yet.
Well, as I mentioned, I think it was just before Thanksgiving on your show, I thought there would be an arrest this week. They were zeroing in on a gentleman whom they arrested this morning in Northern Virginia. And the way this case was cracked was about a month or 6 weeks ago. Bongino, who was the lead on it, and Patel decided to take the old agents off the case and put a new team on it. Now, there was a little resistance, as there always is in the FBI, to any form of change. But the new team came in. They applied some new ideas, some new technologies, And some of the evidence that was sitting right in front of them with fresh eyes was followed, and it was able to be led to this gentleman who they arrested a little bit ago. We don't know much about his ideology or his intentions or his motives yet. And one of the things that FBI officials stressed with me this morning is that this is really the beginning. The arrest is the beginning of trying to understand how this operation was conducted, who's behind it, whether there are more conspirators or whether this is a lone wolf. Still all of that to be determined, but a really extraordinary effort. Almost 5 years later, with a fresh set of eyes and a different approach, the FBI that couldn't solve the case for 4.5 years solves it. Very much like the way the Charlie Kirk investigation occurred in the first few hours. There were a lot of FBI agents in old guard that didn't want to put the suspect's photo out, but Kash Patel and Bongino insisted that was going to be key to getting the father to flip. And they put the photo out, the father flips, and of course you get that arrest as we see. What you're seeing is a different mentality in the FBI, and that plays out in two different ways. First, you see successes that we haven't seen in a while, lots of arrests, cases solved that had not been solved for a long time, other cases which could have gone on for months being solved in 33 hours like Charlie Kirk's assassin. The second part is it results in a lot of whining from FBI people who think they know what's better. And you see that even in the Miranda Devine story earlier this week. You've got these grousers and grouchers because the truth of the matter is Donald Trump ordered Patel and Bongino to break glass at the FBI. They broke glass. And now the FBI is doing things differently. They're succeeding, but there are people who want to focus on the whining and crying.
I think that he is a closeted case. John Solomon's in his 50s. He's unmarried, and he changed all the rules about how you use the word homosexual and gay and so on and so forth when he was at the Washington Times in 2008. And he's a sketchy ass dude. And he was also involved in a meeting 6 weeks ago where he went in and got some information that changed the game that should have actually resulted in the opposite of what they just did right there. I'm going to say that I think John Solomon is a lying fucking snake. And everything that I saw in there, all the body language there and all the lies make me sick. And he's also never worked for the FBI. He has no idea what the shit he's talking about. Excuse me.
That's why he thinks that it's new techniques like using a wanted poster.
Nobody's ever released a picture of somebody before and then found somebody in 33 hours.
Brand new technology like license plate readers and cell phone tracking and looking at bank records. These have revolutionized law enforcement in the last 6 to 8 months. Give me a break. It's just ridiculous.
Why do people bring on this chubby, soft, like jowly, bad broadcasting, lisping weirdo to come say things that are clearly sycophantic government knob slobbing, and then people act like that's our team? I'm so nauseated by the fact that this was actually broadcast and that this dude went out there and said the things. It's just like the Charlie Kirk thing. It's zero things like it. Nobody has a problem with putting out a wanted poster. How many wanted posters has the FBI put out over the last 25 years?
It's an incalculable number at this point.
Right. They actually have an updated list all the time. You can go look at the most wanted thing. It's a regular thing that you put the picture out.
They put them out right before they arrest the guy so they can claim that the wanted poster was the reason for it. That's why it's called the most wanted.
And then you could be like, we got a most wanted. And it was probably because we put out these tips and you, the public, were part of it. And that's why we have this partnership with you, who you pay for us. And then we go do the thing. It's political optics. All of this is crazy to me. And by the way, you know what happened 6 weeks ago is like freaking Steve Baker and his guys put out stories. Starting 60 days ago, they put out stories about Video Sleuth finding new information about the pipe bomb. Then they put out another thing about an analysis of the pipe bomb a couple days later. Then they have the story on November the 4th about the Capitol Police using lethal force on the protesters. Then they have another story about the forensic match, which happened about a month ago. All of these things were accelerated timelines because they went, oh shit, anything to distract from the government involvement in this thing, and we just happened to find a totally lone wolf, completely disconnected from everybody, living in his freaking basement, super sleuth spy that spaced out his transactions but used freaking credit cards over 2 years so that he would never be found by the FBI, and then he was solved, the crime was solved by the new technique of phone pings and fucking license plate readers, and by the way, we also looked at his credit card receipts.
Making purchases to build a bomb before an election because he was politically motivated. Oh, and let me throw in the last little thing. Benjamin Crump is now representing Brian Cole Jr.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Or are you looking at the video that you saw of the of Brian Cole Sr.?
No, I saw a New York Post article that was just sent over to me that Benjamin Crump is getting involved.
So Benjamin Crump represented the father.
Okay.
You know what? At least he's got some competent representation with like a lot of money behind it, because they'll be able to bring in experts that can do this. And maybe, just maybe, we won't have the complete bullshit lie is what they're trying to put here. I talked to Baker yesterday, and he was like, this is gross. I talked to former intel people. I had more than one FBI agent currently on the job suspect the same thing that you did. If you jam somebody up for child pornography, it'd be way easier to go down for dropping a bomb than it would be for the alternative. Everything about this stuff is gross. Yeah. This is like, I told you guys that we were going to find out what kind of country we lived in. I told you guys that maybe 2 weeks ago. We are finding out the country we live in is nauseatingly, disgustingly dishonest. We kind of knew that, but it's really gross to like, it's one thing to know something. You instinctively feel this way. It's like, oh, I felt that way. It's quite another to have the proof thrown in your face, and then people tell you like, we did an awesome job. We're spiking the football. It makes me sick that this is the country that we're going to be in. And I think you said the same thing yesterday.
Because I war gamed this out. And look, people call me a pessimist. I think I'm pragmatic. And I remember war gaming this out with my other pragmatist, George Hill, saying, all right, they're going to get away with it. How are they going to do it? And I did not have it on my bingo card that they would go find a autistic dude living with his mom who maybe they had some kiddie porn on, maybe they were trying to entrap on something else, and they would just hatch this scheme 3 weeks after. I did not have that one, but they're certainly going to try. Before any of this came out yesterday, we were already at a place of concern where it was, well, now we have definitive proof. We have the Reichstag fire proof that our government engaged in this put-up job, and it is not being addressed. It's just kind of being shrugged off. It's, that gate analysis that we use to smoke terrorists overseas, that's not really reliable. Okay. But now it gets worse because the Shani Kirchhoffs are not only going to get away with it, but everybody who is connected with this, because it wasn't limited to her. She didn't go out with that gusto. I mean, if she did, she's a woman who has the biggest balls of all time to like walk around Washington, D.C. doing this, unless she knew she had the blanket of coverage through politicians and bureaucrats across multiple levels and layers of our bureaucracy in the executive and legislative branch. And they're all going to walk away with it, and they're going to high five and backslap and helmet sticker about jamming up some dude who doesn't even look like the person on the grainy video, because his arms are so long that he can tie his shoes without bending over. But we're now all going to be led to believe that, yep, it was a lone wolf, nothing there. Let's just move on. It'll be yet another thing. And it's, right, we're going into Christmas, then we're going to have to talk about the midterm elections, and we're so back and we're so based, and it causes guys like you and me who are actually interested in the welfare of the country, who are interested in the prime directive. We're all supposed to have this social compact where we elect our government that's supposed to do very finite amount of things for us and then just leave us the hell alone. That is now a thing of the past. And it's to a point now where we're intellectual in the intellectual battle space, and we can throw these ideas out there. My concern is that somebody out there who's not as reserved as we are to actually limit our emotional outbursts to the rhetoric is going to say, well, they're all broken and my life sucks, so why don't I just drop something that's more viable than what Shani Kirchhoff did?
I sent this over to one of the neighbors of Brian Cole, and it said, it was the exact piece from the New York Post, which I think the New York Post had the appropriate amount of skepticism, probably because they've actually seen these pictures. Quote, that guy I know who walks the dog is pretty short and has real short legs, like uncommonly short legs. That's a really funny and specific thing to hone in on as a neighbor. I would think that gait analysis would be pretty easy to rule him out or confirm him because his legs are, I would say, uncommonly short. Honing in on that again. Sent that over to one of the other neighbors living in that neighborhood and got this back. That's the first thing my wife said when she saw the video clips and said, quote, he doesn't walk like that. She's seen him walk their little dog literally hundreds of times over the last years. So did they not realize that they were going to have credible, competent people and that someone has actually seen this? How much, if you are living in that area and you have ring cam footage of this guy, please preserve it. Please save it. Upload it if you want. We'll put it into the gait analysis, folks. The funny thing is that the high-level gait analysis that work on behalf of the intelligence agencies, they've been warned off not to go and talk to anybody unless they are asked by law enforcement. And guess who's not asking? So the journalists that want to get this information done, they can't even hire somebody. They can't even pay somebody, regardless of the price, to get it done. And the neighbors can eyeball it and go, not it. You picked the wrong thing. Anyway, What's wild to me is that I keep thinking that they're trying to pull off old information with stuff that we know better. It's like the same kind of things. Like if we just do enough bravado and braggadocious nonsense, if we just do enough Fox News hits, we can convince people of something that's not true. I'm just going to tell you, all of the people that the MAGA folks hated, NBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, New York Times, they all jumped in on this full hog and they were like, this is it. The official word from the government has come down. And for all of you people that saw January 6th and were like, oh, they're lying to us. For all of you people that saw COVID and went, oh, they're lying to us. For all of you who lived through, like, I don't know, the last 25 years and thought that there were not WMDs in Iraq and thought they're fucking lying to us. Maybe you didn't think the vaccines were safe and effective. And so you thought, oh, they're lying to us. Or maybe you just don't even think that Oswald shot Kennedy and maybe there was more to it. Maybe you don't believe in the moon landing. I don't care what it is. Maybe you think the earth is flat. If you think they were lying to us and then you're like, oh, but obviously it was a black autistic guy who looks like he got Benjamin Crump, so he was an anti-Trumper, and that was always who was going to drop the bomb. And you've got the entirety of the intel apparatus, you've got the entirety of the governmental apparatus, and you've got the entirety of this media apparatus that seemed well happy to not ask any questions, and they never picked up the question of what was going on with the Blaze story. In fact, they tried to debunk it. All of them did. And all of them have not even seen anything more than the shady, slim, garbage criminal complaint. Case closed.
This is what
case freaking closed.
I can speak for both of us. This is what our thing is. We're not here to dunk on the FBI. We want the truth out there. And the spin that we're getting here doesn't pass muster at all. At all. A reasonable person, the podcast Dans of the world, would ask so many questions, and it wouldn't be a stretching credulity to ask these questions. I mean, we've thrown out a million of them today. The guy's arms are too long. How could we possibly be up there at the podium saying, job well done, we're moving on to the next things? And anybody who dares to question this, as we've been encouraging them on our prior lives and our prior professions to say, hey, don't trust me, question everything. Anybody who does that now, well, you're a problem.
They've had it the entire time. But the video appears manipulated, appears dramatically manipulated. And I'm going to tell you why, so we put the bottom line up front, because it is the biggest political scandal the FBI is ever going to deal with, including collusion and Spygate. The FBI, I am absolutely convinced, knows the identity of the person who planted that bomb. I've told you this many times. The person who planted that bomb was definitely an insider. It was not an anti-Trump person. It was someone planting a bomb to create a narrative that crazy MAGA people are trying to assassinate Kamala Harris.
When was the moment then? You were asked at the podium, what was the moment that you were talking about? When was the moment that you realized that you were wrong on your podcast? I want to know what that moment was, and I want it fully described for us in order for me to go beyond just trust me, bro. I need facts and I need evidence, which is what something that you once knew and required and demanded of your elected officials.
One more time. We're just going to play this because it's so delicious.
You know, I don't know if you remember this. This is before you became the deputy FBI director. You put a post on X right after this happened. And you said there's a massive cover-up because the person that planted those pipe bombs, they don't want you to know who it is because it's either a connected anti-Trump insider or an inside job. You said that, you know, long before you even thought of as deputy FBI director.
Yeah, that's why I said to you, this investigation's just begun. We are pretty comfortable. We have our guy. I think as again, legal process starts to surface and information, facts start to come out, the public's going to be very comfortable with the investigation that was conducted under Director Patel and his leadership. He's been great on this. But I don't want to, listen, I was paid in the past, Sean, for my opinions. That's clear. And one day I'll be back in that space. But that's not what I'm paid for now. I'm paid to be your deputy director, and we base investigations on facts.
Did you hear what he said, too, by the way? He was like, this director's been great on this, while he's shaking his head in the no. Some of those things are really funny if you guys go back and watch. I had to play it twice because it's such a moment to witness Sean Hannity ask a journalistic question. It's brilliant to me. Anyway, I have no faith in what they did. I have no faith in this FBI. Sadly, neither do my friends who still work there. They were like, why do we have to eat this garbage and act like it's real?
Same here. Same here. I mean, I have my sources back there as well that were all sort of articulating the exact same thing to me yesterday. None of them believe it.
Yeah, and do you know how bad a lie it has to be, and how obvious and how demoralizing that is? I mean, at the one thing, these guys have decided to destroy the morale of the FBI, which I'm a little bit amused by, but I don't think they intended to do it that way. I think it's a bug and not a feature, which would really change the game. If they meant to go in and demoralize the FBI by just acting like clowns, I'd be like, carry on, gentlemen. Like, yes, well done. That's an interesting. I would have never seen if their goal was to go in like a suicide bomber and be like, not only am I going to destroy myself, but I'm taking this building down with you, like Samson style. I'd be like, all right, good on you. God bless. Godspeed. Make it happen. That is not what I see there. I see guys that are patting themselves on the back. I see a congratulatory circle jerk of a bunch of Fox News personalities, and not one of them has any instinct that, like, they probably just got played. How funny would it be to find out if the FBI actually, like the actual FBI, the mid-level things come out there and be like, hey, by the way, we just set you guys up and we're about to expose you. So it's retirement time. I'm already told Dan's packing up his stuff. So that's what the security detail guys that I know told me, that they're packing Dan's apartment so he can go back to that thing that he just said, which is interesting that he dropped it on the podcast or on the Sean Hannity show. You know, I'll go back to giving my opinions for a living soon. All right, bro. We'll see you there. I'm looking forward to more Dan versus the other Dan. It'll be pre-podcast Dan and post FBI Dan, and we'll still have FBI Deputy Dan in the middle to be able to play with. It'll be really fun and sad.
Since the investigation just began, it'll be interesting to find out what his perspective is when he's able to actually offer his opinions.
Which he's paid for. Yeah. Anyway, that's where we're going to end. Steve, you got something coming up this weekend? Are you doing one or no?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Not worn out yet from talking to my good friend Kyle Seraphin, political podcasting sensation. I'm going to be doing the American Radicals podcast, the Hobbyist AmRad Pod, Saturday grab bag edition, 10:30 Eastern time on rumble.com/AmRadPod and YouTube, the American Radicals podcast. So going to cover a whole bunch of different stuff like hiring illegal aliens to be cops. And the New York Times is really worried that DEI might hurt white guys. So you have to join us to find out about that. It should be a good time. Again, tomorrow, Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time.
Folks, you know how to find that. Find Steve in the American Radicals podcast. Steve, I got 2 musical interludes. This one will send you off, and then we'll go do something to close out because we need a little bit of positivity. This has nothing to do with anything, but this is just how I feel in my heart right now.
Tonight the music seems so loud. I wish that we could lose this crowd. Maybe it is better this way. We hurt each other with the things we want to say. We could have been so good together. We could have lived this dance forever. But now who's gonna dance with me?
That's post-podcast Dan singing.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Steve, good seeing you. Thanks for joining me. Gave me some sanity. I'm going to go play some FBI songs, and people can enjoy that too. Have a good weekend, man.
You too, man.
All right, folks, that's it. That's it for us today. We got to play an FBI song because I just can't handle it. Make sure that you have given us a thumbs up, especially if you like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here's some FBI's.
Yeah, honey, all into me. Yeah, honey, baby, all to me. Yeah, hey. Welcome to my FBI's. A flippy eyeball surprise. I'm focused on catching bad guys. Just flying the friendly skies. Don't be staring in my FBI's. I fired all the talented guys. Whip by my honey pop pies. Tweet into the bureau surprises. An agency, oh so rash. Investigating outcomes last. Announcing things real fast. That's my style, I'm Director Kash. Look into my FBI's. Black leather on my wee little thighs. Nookie as a mic, got Jeff jet flies. Loyalty to just one guy. Look into my FBI's. Crooked like most wanted guys. Tiny like pocket size. Hiding all the Epstein files. Yo, come and get on this private jet to a big event to see his girl set. Taxpayers lament, but she hot baby bad. She do not fret that his eyes be bent. He's chopped and cuffed, was locker stuff. Ain't calling Trump's bluffs, cause he gives him stuff. If he sound in a huff and you done had enough, then he say that's tough, he's about to get rough. Welcome to my FBI. My list of foes down inside. Some stopping bad terrorist guys. And none arrested, so maybe it's lies. Don't be mad at how I downsize. Had to snuff out some liberal spies. Now my caviar is always supplied. And all my people pray that I'm fired. Look into my FBI's. Black leather jet flies, loyalty to just one guy. Look into my FBI's, crooked like most wanted guys, tiny like diamond, pocket size, hiding all the Epstein files. Yeah, had it up, yeah, had it up,
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.